How's it going, everyone? And hopefully, welcome to another episode of No Excuses on YouTube.com with your favorite show host, Arsil.
And Hell, and we're here to bring you the latest video game news and commentary for the week, except we don't have it today, and this is sort of a last minute thing. Fern managed to find something unsavory to eat last night, apparently, and he has been taken out by food poisoning. Presumably, he's having fun living in the bathroom of his house at this point. So we will just do our best to bring you an impromptu show. Very little preparation has gone into this because of the mysterious absence of the Furnarian, but we'll make do,
So, yeah, as
I
usual,
suppose.
finding a brainless activity in Final Fantasy to do when we can't think of anything else. Oh, page, I need my... So, righto. If you want, what's the stick again? You're better at the stick.
If you want to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email, noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server, and you can talk to the show hosts and other listeners to the show, and just generally sort of shitpost in our channels. And you can get there by clicking on the link that will be provided in the show description. That will be underneath the show archive on YouTube once somebody gets around to actually including all that stuff. I don't know if we did it ahead of time or not.
We have
But
not. I need to go through and update them. It's on the to-do list. I'll do it after the show. For me now. I'll click it. Hopefully
yes,
everything's
indeed.
hopefully everything's still golden. I open up my browser, as it tell me on my account that we're suddenly live. Going, I hope. Yep, everything looks like it's still good. So yeah, we have just us out here farming some memories for the Shadowbringers relic weapons because the Eureka weapons don't exist. Because Eureka doesn't exist, you can't make me go back there.
That's the sound of trauma right there.
I had to sit through.
Pagos trauma.
Yeah, Pagos is. Have you attempted to endure it yet?
No, and I don't see why I would. Like, what is there in it for me?
You get to understand on a very deep level just how terrible human beings are.
But I have Twitter.
You can get it personalized with some guy out there in Pagos who will pull early every single time after you sat there working to spawn the mob with like 10 other people for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I have to say the Baldesian Arsenal community seems unspeakably toxic.
They're weirdos. Um they're not as
Like,
bad as the Pagos money farmers, but they're still really bad.
you occasionally they will sort of brush up against the rest of the FF community, and they just come off like basically they remind me of people who are way too into clan battle in Pinecone, and that
Yeah.
everything has to be rigorously scheduled according to their schedule, and they treat their community as though it's official.
Yeah, and while Destiny and Arsenal is hard, especially for essentially a dungeon where you're going to get pugs, it doesn't matter what's going to happen. Somebody's going to take
Well,
the portal.
the thing is that they don't approve of that. They don't approve of pugs. They
Yeah,
will actively harass and persecute anybody who isn't part of their community,
and so
from what I've seen.
what you get is a ridiculous feedback loop in of people just sniping at each other, and like I finished my Hydatos weapon this week, which is why I'm so particularly angry at Eureka again. And I didn't have that much left to do. I just had to go get a few more crystals, and I just really didn't want to go back there. And I went in there, and there was a guy just sitting in the Baldassian arsenal, keeping the instance alive after everybody else had already died, because the rest of the group was a giant bunch of tools to him.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what happens. You don't get rid of toxicity by being extra toxic to anybody who wants to be a part of your group. Like, that's not going to work.
Like, this guy was probably just in there, just taking his attempt at Ozma, and because he took somebody's slot in their pre-canned group, and he had no way of knowing this was a pre-canned group, that uh, he uh, he managed to hack everybody off in their little circle.
I've seen these people discoursing online though that unbelievably self-righteous. Like I don't really understand how you get to that point that they're at, but they seem to sincerely believe that they've got some kind of divine endorsement to be the only people who are allowed to run Baldur's Arsenal.
Yep, it's awful. Everything about Eureka is awful. But
Since Square Enix are a company that seems to want to go back and rebuild things that they think have aged poorly or become subpar, though maybe they will one day fix it. That's technically possible, or at least they might like dramatically reduce the requirements, the way they have for so many other things in the past.
ah, crap. Yeah, it would be nice. I hate every bit of going into Eureka. It's just not a fun experience. I know how to do it. I can lead a Eureka group efficiently. If I got the Animus run we did when I was getting you all your crystals and trying to get you up to Pazuzu that one night. Like I can do it. It's just I don't want to
Well,
because
it's not fun at all. It's just a nuisance. Like it's basically a non-automated version of all the things that are automated in Bosnia.
yeah, it's they did realize the problem with with Eureka isn't even Eureka itself. It's the type of people Eureka will attract because it's so social in nature. You just get wackadoodle weirdos that come in there. And because any person can screw with any optimized group strategy if they just feel like it or if they just don't know, you can just wind up accidentally taking a whole lot of people off.
Yeah, I think that it was probably the right decision for them to take a break from the whole format, this expansion, because there's still a lot of people who are salty about various things in Bosnia, and I think it probably just needs to be cooled off at this point. Hopefully, they don't clown up their deployment of relic weapons later in the chain for the Mandeville chain, but I'm sure people always find something to complain about, so sometimes it's hard to take the temperature for how successful something is without participating in it. Like the only reason I have a unilaterally negative opinion of Eureka is because you've airbashed me no small amount about how unpleasant it is.
Yeah. I mean, I took you through the whole first zone. That's a preview of what's to come.
That in and of itself was just time consuming. If it were had groups that formed naturally, like if they just bolted on the system for Bosnia onto there and maybe halved the amount of time you just spend sort of derping about not accomplishing very much, then I think it would be perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, because Baja still has the requirement to kill mobs to spawn critical engagements and stuff and
But from
skirmishes.
everything you've said about Pargos, it sounds like it was designed to reduce efficiency of play.
Yeah, and it seems to be that might have been the case, just because they they were rushing to get it done. I don't think it's a secret that Pagos was rushed. I don't have my Omicron yet. I was too busy this week. Is that's not the big one? But yeah. So how, that's splitting into my week, but it makes it so I don't have to talk about Eureka. Nice. So your week.
I didn't really have much of one. Things at work are chaos. 2 more resignations. Lots of overtime.
How do you have any
Generally
people
not happy
left?
with my... Because we're hiring people as fast as they'll join. But the only person who the only person who's really dedicated to the art of training somebody properly is me, and because of my form abbreviated history as an educator. But that means that people get unhappy with their lot because I can only properly mentor one person at a time. Everybody else just has to freewheel it. So it's not really it isn't really working all that well, to be totally honest. Things are in a permanent state of nearly falling apart. We keep hiring more people, but
Okay.
there's I think that there's a certain amount of we're caught between like diversity requirements and the fact that we know that there are certain countries which seems to have produced exclusively bad eggs as far as our previous hiring experiences go.
Yeah.
So
Do they have people that run
yeah,
really fast?
that's not the problem actually. The problem is historically the problem has been married women out of India
Ah, that one.
because they're just used to not really having to do very much, and anytime you ask very much of them, they get annoyed. Like it's like they seem to expect things to be in place to serve them rather than well you've got like classically New Zealanders seem to now this might be true in the modern West generally up until recently is that people take their job as a challenge to overcome. So, oh, well, the job contains things that need to be done, and you need to find a way to do them. It seems like the bulk of the hires that we bring on see work as a place to pass the time and collect a paycheck from.
Yeah.
And anytime they're asked to do something that they don't particularly like, they peck a sad about it.
Yeah.
So,
I could honestly see myself falling into that trap if I worked for a big corpo. I'm not in that position now. I'm working to take over my company. I have every incentive to work as hard as possible.
see, the thing is, diversity requirements are all well and good, but people have different cultures in other countries. I don't know if diversity people realize this, but there's this thing called other cultures.
There's this thing called diversity that
And
means people are different.
yeah, the other cultures tend to have very radically different approaches to work. We've talked about this on the show in the past because of Fern's woes with hiring people from various African countries where the work ethic is completely different, and we have a similar issue. It's just the work ethic is not there. The people's attitude to work is all wrong in a lot of ways. Like at least the people who are just like career climbers and they don't want to stay because they want to move up faster than we can accommodate. Like as much as that may be annoying to me, I at least understand it in the sense that oh well they're not actually doing it to hurt anybody. They're doing it because they're looking out for their career interests. But in the case of the sort of people that we've been hiring out of India, particularly, and you can tell it's those ones specifically because the ones that are out of Singapore, that are out of Philippines, they don't behave this way. They are just trying to serve their whims, basically. It's not about oh well, I want to I want a better career, so I'm going to go somewhere else where I'm going to be paid more. No, their attitude is like, I'm not actually going to go somewhere else. I'm just going to whine and complain and do no work. So yeah, we've been having problems getting quality staff, and the the thing with people who don't work well is that the people who are trying to work will sort of organically make life difficult for the ones that aren't working, even if they're not really conscious of themselves doing it, just to like get rid of them basically. People who aren't cooperating will not remain popular parts of a team very long,
Yeah.
and that's fortunate in its own way, I suppose. But I wish it didn't have to be this way. I wish people, when they signed a contract to do a job, actually had some intention of doing it. But that doesn't really seem to be the case for a lot of people. It's not something I understand.
I
Like I feel like I was born a couple of generations too late, basically.
I could understand if it was just a loathing of doing your job as a job, but in a team environment, I would at least want to make sure I'm not screwing over the people that I'm working with. And
Yeah,
I would go out of my way to make sure they're not bothered in any way and get at least that much work done. It doesn't seem like you even have that.
no, well, I'm not. I don't mean to say everybody like this, and I don't mean to say even everybody from this particular ethnic division are like that. This has just been that because we've got such a massive surplus of Indian immigrants looking for entry level jobs in our job market, they make up the vast majority of applicants that we get, but they all end up being poor. So I've basically started intervening in the hiring process and getting CVs scrapped for various reasons. Um, and the sorts of you can usually find a reason to get rid of somebody's CV quite easily if they're this type of person. You just need to understand how to read the subtext.
Yeah.
Like looking mainly, you want to look for the things that they don't say and the inconsistencies in their CV, because it seems like everybody who is not me lies on their CV. And maybe that's why they all get hired for jobs and I don't, but at least I can say I don't lie on my CV.
Is CV your resume equivalent in your part of the world?
Yeah. Curriculum vitae. That's what we call it. A resume and a curriculum vitae are actually slightly different things, but what they actually mean varies by country. So generally, you can say they're the same thing. You can often find inconsistencies in their CV. Like I had the people who are selecting the candidates reject somebody recently because when I reviewed their work experience, they had led off by saying that they are experienced technician in chemistry and microbiology techniques, and that's fine. The thing is that I know all the methods that they explained that they had been trained in, and not a single one of them was actually a microbiology technique. They were all chemistry techniques. So this individual had worked in a microbiology lab, but done exclusively chemistry work, and had tried to sell themselves as a experienced microbiology technician because they were an experienced technician from a lab that did microbiology, not because they actually had any training or concept of how to do any of that work. So things like that people who aren't very well acquainted with the work that we do, will often miss little things like that, and other things like conspicuous gaps in people's work experience. Like, oh well, they've listed all of this work, but it's actually compressed to within 12 months, and then they've got like 2 years of gap before that, which is just unexplained, and that sort of thing. But yeah, the thing is that most of the time when I'm intervening in the hiring process is to stop us hiring certain people that I think will be poor fits or will be bad at the job. Unfortunately, we just need lots of people. So it's very, very hard to split that balance because there's strong pressure to bring more warm bodies on board so that we can actually get the work done. But I don't want to waste my time training people who are going to leave because they suck at their job, and we just can't afford to let people suck at their job. Like we are not a molten core laboratory. We can't afford to carry dead weight. There's not enough room for it.
Oh,
So
it took me a second to understand what you were saying. Like, not a molten core laboratory. Does it mean you keep the thermostat turned down? Oh no, he means the raid. Okay.
yeah, because I mean, molten core was a 40-man raid that was designed not to need 40 men,
Yeah.
essentially. But the way commercial laboratory industry works, you need to have your workforce accounted for. Everybody who's on deck needs to be doing their part, pulling their weight. Otherwise, things just won't work. So yeah, that's the sort of problem where we're constantly caught in, is that we need to hire people. Most of the applicants are bad. A lot of the ones that we do bring on board are also bad. Because even once you actually do manage to get somebody who isn't just strictly bad, there's still a huge amount of variance in the way that people perform, even if they're doing their best.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't count on getting anything more than the minimum anyway. There's just so many issues at play with the whole process that it's very hard to get things done, and people keep leaving, and it's a self-catalyzing process because people leave when they don't feel things are going well generally, but things aren't going well because they keep leaving. There's not real. This is something that's true everywhere right now. I don't know why everybody is so gung ho to leave their job, and I think that this is another facet of the fact that it's married women are the ones who are leaving, because that means that they're all women from a 2 revenue stream family. So changing jobs is something that you have more latitude to do, even if the economy is not perfectly secure. Whereas if you are responsible for your household's entire income, you might have a strong motivation to move up, but you don't have a strong motivation to just change a job on a whim, because if you can't get another one, you're in dire straits. So yeah, I'm not happy with how much I'm paid, but the reality is that on the precipice of economic disaster like my country currently is on, I can't afford to just ditch the fact that I've got seniority at my current job in the hopes of getting a better paycheck somewhere else where I'm going to be the new guy.
Yeah, it's you got to hedge your bets with stuff like that. Turn in your feathers, by the way, and because it's a risk calculation, right? Is my ability to strong arm these people into paying me more later worth holding on to the seniority here, or is it worth it just to pack it up and go try again somewhere else?
But the thing is, even if it's probably the calculation would come out that it would be better for me to try somewhere else. Now is not the time because the new guy is the first one to get cut when economic hard times hit, and economic hard times are going to hit. It's just a question of exactly when they start.
Yeah, I think we're seeing them start to slow roll in. Right now, everybody's still hiring at least, but once the low skill position problem is solved, and it will resolve itself one way or another, it'll take care of itself. And we have employees there. We're going to run into a problem of everything just costs way too much, and nobody's paycheck's gone up to compensate, and employers can't afford to raise paychecks right now. So you're going to see a lot of them people they just hired get cut, and they're not going to be hiring anymore. Going to have moderately trained staff to do the positions that they hired them for, at least in the U.S. That seems to be the way it's moving. At your company, you just seem to have a revolving door. I'm not quite sure how
Yeah,
it
well,
revolves that hard. I haven't heard of a
it,
company that revolves that hard.
it's because of immigration basically. Um, the in the national government that preceded Jacinda's reign was very, very focused on aggressively increasing the size of the population. So in the span of that administration's reign, our population grew from 4 million to 5 million, and all of it was unchecked immigration. Um, this basically ballooned the workforce massively and drove wages right down into the toilet. So, and because the industry that I'm part of basically engaged in a race to the bottom on price as soon as they were able to lower these wages. Like it all went into undercutting the competition. So wages now, because everybody has been mutually undercutting each other, wages can't rise now. So the pay is just generally very poor in my industry, and so people will constantly be looking to move out to get to somewhere else that's got a different source of income rather than this particular environment. Like if you move to a company that is uh, producing things for export, let's say, they're going to have more money on their hands
There's a
generally
follow up,
than
by the way.
this. I thought this was the follow up.
No, there's he turns into a bigger dragon.
Oh, okay. But yeah, it's just it's a very stupid scenario where you're paying for decades for the cost of unchecked immigration and its effects on the workforce. There's not really anything to be done about it now. Like you basically have to wait for a massive compliance crash where the quality of the work has gotten so low due to either understaffing or poor quality employees or a combination of both, which is more likely that you it results in something catastrophic happening in the economy due to like export goods turning out to be contaminated and us getting banned from a major export partner's market, which has happened once in the past. Um, there's basically no way of resolving the situation. The market that I'm currently in is the industry that I'm currently in is basically locked in this death spiral of attempting to undercut each other and race to the bottom on price, and they don't seem to be willing to pull out of it. But yeah, unfortunately, that's just the way it is, and there's not really anything that anybody can do about it because nobody's got any money right now, and it would be very, very expensive to try and change the paradigm. Like you're looking at a 5 to 10 year process of very, very careful marketing and building a reputation from an angle that other people have abandoned. and nobody's going to start undertaking a 10-year plan in the current economy.
Yeah,
So
you'd be lucky to find somebody with a 2-year plan right now.
yeah, like most companies are literally operating off the 1 quarter plan right now. That all they're interested in is making sure that they can get the numbers up for the next quarter, and that's all. That's as far ahead as anybody is looking. Thanks to Jacinda's government, basically. But yeah, so basically, this has caught me in an unending loop of training new people and being frustrated at the lack of labour, meaning that my sort of comfort with my schedule has basically disappeared again. Every time it looks like we're just about to crest the hill and stabilise, somebody else will leave in a huff. And unfortunately, one of the people that left this week was very, very critical. Probably not as critical as the lab manager leaving, probably not as critical as me leaving, but definitely very critical. So I don't know how they're going to replace her. Fortunately, she has like a 6-week notice period or something, so we've got a while to figure it out. Still not a great situation, but it is what it is. So I haven't really played much in the way of any video games this week. I just a little bit of gacha. Pinecone's new Christmas event. Well, it is a Christmas event, and to my extreme frustration, they have surgically removed the word Christmas from every dialogue box, every
This is something that I've
translation.
noticed on a lot of iOS games. It seems to
Even
be,
though the Japanese says Christmas,
yeah,
and everybody can hear it, nobody is fooled by this. It is transparent virtue signaling.
yeah. It is on like so many of the practically every Japanese game on iOS is localized by some group in California, and they always pull this crap. It seems like everyone in recent memory has pulled this crap. Now I haven't. I don't think FGO does, but but they're a bit of a special case as always.
Well, yeah, because religion is very important to the setting. In FGO, it would if they changed it, there probably wouldn't be any outcry because most of the people who play the game are incredibly possed for one reason or another. But it wouldn't make sense for them to do it, so it would probably get objected to by the Japanese faction. But because the Japanese side has very tight control over what goes on in the English version of FGO, much more so than in Pinecone, where they've got a reasonable amount of latitude. But the it's really obnoxious in Pinecone because everything is voice acted.
Yeah,
So you can hear the voice actors say Christmas every time and say Christmas present rather than holiday gift and things like that. And holiday doesn't make any sense to begin with. There is nobody else celebrating a festival on December the 25th. I'm sorry. You can make up all these excuses and so forth, and all of the bullshit retroactively edited history to try and make it sound like Christmas is actually some pilfered holiday from somewhere else. All of which is wrong, by the way. If you find an actually credible historian instead of some America-centric modernist,
some lefty
you can
Berkeley
usually get
professor.
Well, the thing is that even the righties all buy into this. Like Spencer Clavin's bought into it hook, line, and sinker, and he's extremely well informed about most classical era stuff.
Oh,
But
well,
he buys into like the Saturnalia narrative,
yeah, well,
which
he's got a bit of poop pushed in his brain, if you know what I mean.
yeah, I do know what you mean. But like, what's his excuse though? How does he tell himself that he's actually being intellectually honest? I don't see how, because an actual historian will tell you that there's no alignment between Saturnalia and Christmas whatsoever. It's not even a case of the baptizing of a pagan tradition and reforming it for Christianity. No, because Saturnalia is a different festival held at a different time over a different period. It just happens to also be sort of at the end of the year-ish, and it was deliberately emphasized around the time of the rise of Christianity to compete with Christianity, not the other way around. There's but it's particularly a problem with Protestants because Protestants tend to be historically illiterate when it comes to church history because they assume that everything that doesn't say Protestantism is the one true church, is evil popish lies. So you tend to get a lot of absolutely bullshit history being related by the American media that is at cross purposes to Christianity. But
I think this
yeah,
is
so
more of an American boomer issue than anything else, and that they still will believe everything the lie box says.
it's I'm a little bit incredulous at how long it takes them to learn lessons, to be honest. But yeah, that's the way it be. So I'm salty at Pinecone over that. I don't really understand why it's necessary. Like, I know why it's actually happening, but I wonder why the people who are actually participating in it think it's happening, because they aren't important enough to be a part of the agenda. They're just carrying it out. They're foot soldiers for the regime, as it were. So yeah, it seems very bizarre to me, but I guess that's just how it is. So yeah, I'm annoyed about that. What I'm less annoyed about is that I've finally managed to catch up just barely enough power that I can scratch out a single attempt kill on the very hard boss of this particular event. Thankfully, it's a pretty squishy boss all told, but this is the first time I think I've been able to use a single attempt to kill a boss of a new event, because this is a new one. This isn't a rerun, right?
Yep, brand new.
Yeah. So I finally caught up at least that much.
Yeah, he did feel way
Um,
squishier. I have like 45 seconds left over with the first team I slapped together.
I can only just sort of scratch out the win, but the power curve seems to have been very steep over the past, like, rank 12, 13, 14.
Yeah,
But it seems to have had a bigger effect than other ranks. Plus, something that I didn't know that seems to be the case, that this doesn't appear to be mentioned anywhere, is that the fifth star, when you upgrade from 4-star to 5-star, changes your passive ability.
yeah, it buffs it to have a bigger effect.
A very, very much bigger effect. Like, not like 10% stronger, but like
50.
200 to 300 to 500% stronger.
Yeah.
It basically makes you have one at all. So, so yeah, I didn't realize it was quite that large, because it's not documented anywhere as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
It's just something you're sort of expected to know about by inspection, which seems difficult. Pass, really. But yeah, that's how it be. I got my first 6-star. I just finished Carol this morning. I
Yay.
have enough very hard shards for Peko and for Kokoro and for Reno, but I don't have enough orbs to go around. And honestly, I just want to hang on to the orbs that I've got left after Carol, because I think Yukari's next month, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and she's best girl and best support. So
She's best support in PvE from now until the end of time.
yeah, so well, she's pretty good in PvP as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, she just
You,
applies to everything basically.
if you don't know what to put on your PvP team, just stick Yukari in there. She'll battery somebody.
Alcohol power. But yeah, so I don't want to spend my orbs, because if I can't get another extra multiple of whatever it is, 100 orbs by the time I've got enough very hard shards for Yukari, then I would want to do Yukari as my next one, because it's going to have an effect on more game modes than any other one that I could pick.
Yeah,
Because
she's
all the other tanks are still very viable. I mean, Pekarine may be the most robust one in terms of raw being a meat shield
she
when
is
she gets
fat.
6-star.
She is so
But
fat. She never
that
die.
that's not going to, like, revolutionize the way I build teams in multiple different game modes
But
or
Yukari gets
anything
an
like that.
AoE hot on her Union Burst.
Yeah, that's like that moves her from being just a TP battery in non-magic centric fights to being useful in every fight, basically.
Yeah, she becomes able to do not as good of a Union Burst for healing and that kind of thing as what's her name, New Year's Yui, but a pretty dang good alternative.
Yeah. Um, I I took another poke at the boss of the dungeon as well that I'm on, just to see, because I hadn't attacked it in a while and I couldn't remember what it was about it that sucked. And then I ran into that poison. And I'm like, oh, that was the reason. Now I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. I had to get 5
What what
fully
is
built
what is
teams.
what is the non-cheese way to deal with that poison?
You just die to it. It's
So
just
you're just
going.
supposed to use multiple teams and then
Yeah, they're
face
they're
plant into them over and over again.
at my level. If I wanted to sit there and noodle my way out, I don't think I could find a way to do it. I could probably. I don't think I have enough healers to do it, even with New Year's UE. My healers are just not that built. Because Yukari and New Year's UE take care of everything. I don't need anybody else. But the poison's just going to kill you. Every day I run 3 teams into that thing of fully built hardest hitters I got, and that's how I kill it. And I'm at the top of the gear curve right now with those 3 teams, and it still takes me 3
Yeesh.
teams to kill it. It took me 5
Yeesh.
teams pre-building all their union bursts beforehand to kill it the first time I did it, and I was at level like 142 with everybody at whatever the current gear was for the time.
Yeesh.
I did a lot of refreshes to get some people geared up. It's a bugbear. Yeah, they intended you to get stuck on this one for a while. It sat there unkilled for months, despite me being always at the level cap since that dungeon came out. Pretty much, might have hit level cap a little bit after it came. Not sure. I don't remember exactly when it was
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway,
you just die.
FGO's in the Imaginary Scramble event, which has been a much more engaging event story wise so far. I'm behind on the story. I just don't have the time necessary to play it, so I haven't quite got to all the way to the end of the story and found out what the dealio. But it's been a much more engaging story than the recent events, which have all been quite bad, to be honest. I haven't really enjoyed them at all. Although, to be fair, a lot of that is reruns. Plus, the Nobu event was incredibly mediocre. So, although that seems to be the general opinion, is that the event was mediocre. It's not just me being tired of it. Everybody thought it was dumb. But yeah, the current event is much more interesting. It's kind of grindy, which is probably part of what has slowed me down because of the
Quit
exploration
walking
mechanic
around
that
the
they've got.
freaking tree, you stupid dragon.
Yeah, they do that. But it's been a fun event. It's quite foreigner centric, though. Frustratingly, they still don't really explain much about the foreigners and their motivations. Just that they're malevolent in some sort of abstract sense. Um, Yu Yu has played a much great. Yang Guifei has played a much greater role in the story than she has previously in the plot, and she's actually become fairly endearing, but over enthusiastic. Since she's a representative of a slightly more minor member of the pantheon from Lovecraft, so she's not as well known. Cthulhu, who's like a fire elemental from Formalhaut.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Why did I pull this
but
card?
if there weren't so many things vying for my quartz, I would probably pull for her because she's a really fun solo servant to build up. She's sort of like a much more mechanically developed version of Kiahime for single targets in that sense, and that all of her mechanics are based around burn gimmicks, and it actually works really well if you for the summer event that we just finished this year. There's a CE that if you max limit break that and give it to Yang Guifei, she can become an incredibly powerful solo servant by stacking heaps and heaps of burns really quickly and then using that to cash in on bonus damage, and allows her to basically have damage equivalent type advantage against basically anybody plus then some. So yeah, quite a fun servant to use. And the reason why I know that, though, is a part of the event that I don't like, which is that the event has tons of mandatory party battles, in the sense that you don't get to pick any of your dudes, meaning that you get stuck with really wonky team comps that don't really work, and you've just got to try and figure out how to deal with them. Which In another week, maybe I wouldn't have minded so much because it's just a puzzle to solve, right? How do you use these bizarre tools that you've been given to credibly deal with the challenge in front of you? Unfortunately, because they're such a wonky combination of servants, it takes a very long time in terms of like raw physical time to resolve the battles because you just don't have high damage output. You don't have type advantage or anything like that on your side. So you end up sort of frustratedly trying to hurry the battle along, but not so much that you make a mistake and get everybody killed, so you have to start again, which has happened to me once. Yeah, it's a little bit of a frustrating aspect to the event. Fortunately, as far as the rest of the event goes, I've got some really, really powerful farming units that I've built up over the course of the past year, so I'm able to make the actual farming process go really smoothly, which has taken a lot of the burden off and made it so that the event is actually doable for me to some extent. But yeah, that's that as far as that's concerned. Haven't really done much on FF due to lack of time, simple lack of time, because it takes longer to play. I did end up last night doing an alliance raid where I basically spent the entire raid chatting with the tank about Seth videos.
I see.
So that was fun. And quoting lines from his Space Station 13 video.
Quote the line from the Space Station 13 video. Go get you banned from Final Fantasy.
No, I didn't. I did not quote that one. I didn't want to get banned.
Thanks. Boom. Replace the boom, the cutoff word. For those wondering, gamer word.
Speaking of, I saw a. Actually, no, I won't go through with that. In honor of Fern, I won't continue with that. Yeah, so as far as it's concerned, I don't really have much else to talk about. I haven't watched any new anime. Again, it's more or less a time constraint thing. Because I've got too many things I want to do and not enough time to do them in. I've more or less continued watching the things that I was watching, which is not very many titles. I just think that the decline has been too sharp in the quality of anime overall. I just don't have the motivation to try as many new shows as I used to because so many of them are just bad. Like, I mean, I could try it, but it's not going to pay off. I'm not going to be rewarded for the time investment because it's just bad. Most of the things are just bad. They don't even try to be good.
There's another phenomenon we don't talk about because it's not really relevant to us anymore. Certainly not relevant to me anymore, but it used to be being able to talk to people about the current anime that's going on. But I guess you would call them the anime community in air quotes, are just a bunch of weirdos now.
Well, I've got people I can talk to at work about it, so that wouldn't be a problem if there was anything worth watching, but there's not.
Yeah.
Like, there's quite a few anime watchers at work, although a lot of them are women, surprisingly. Probably they mostly watch things like I think most of them got their start watching anime on like Netflix or something, and then just went looking for more.
Yeah, I noticed back when I was in college there was a huge upsurge in female anime watchers. I knew tons of girls that watched anime in college. I didn't know any before then. And it seemed like that was about the time it was just catching on, and then and it seems to have only gotten more so.
Yeah. Anyway, I just haven't watched much other than that. Like, I still haven't quite seen in Chainsaw Man what other people see in it.
I dropped it already.
Just,
That
it's
second
not.
episode was bad enough for me to drop it.
It's just not good. Like, but it's not good in the way that I expect it to not be good. Like, it's not good in the sense that it's basically just the same as every other shonen.
Yeah, it's just
So, like, what exactly is it about this that people find so thoroughly compelling?
I know people really like the guy that wrote it. He's been popular in the manga reader circles for a while for stuff that doesn't have an adaptation. But that second episode was really bad. They have failed to hook me by the end of the second episode. They had my attention with the first episode, and then the second episode was terrible.
Yeah, it was not a great follow up to the pilot. The reality is that to capture most people for the longest time, it's been the 3 episode test is what people normally say. Well, they'll give something 3 episodes, and if those 3 episodes are good, then they will stick with it. So you've got to hold on at least that long.
Yeah, I probably should go check out the third episode and see if they fix it. And
No, it
it's a
won't
little
help.
redeemable, but I just
It's not
I
like
get
the the episode that I just watched is what, the third or the fourth, I don't know. It's like they've started there's a lot of action sequence in there, but it's all very banal.
yeah.
It's not cool. It doesn't have cool factor to it.
It's not
I
like
don't really understand what it is about it that people find so compelling. Like if you put it up against other modern shonen like Hero Aka, it's just nowhere near as good.
like you can only get so far with cool action set pieces and visuals, and those usually
I
work
think you
better.
can get a long way with it.
I think you can get a
Like
long way with it too, but I think you can get a lot further in like a video game or something. In anime, you can sometimes get away with it if your animation is really on point and you're like UFO table or something. You can run with that alone.
But the
But
thing is that the animation is really good. The problem is that the actual concepts behind it are bland.
I see. Well, that's a lie. I don't see. I have to watch it. This is when we're talking about a visual thing that I can't physically see.
But if you look at like the big fights in if you look at say Jujutsu Kaisen,
Okay.
it's a very recent, very modern, very shonen anime. The fights in it have their own sort of character to them. It's a very like when you look at the sort of the visual language used in a Jujutsu Kaisen sort of apex fight for the episode or whatever, like the climax. It's got its own character. You can tell what show it's from just by looking, and it's got its own sort of flair to the way that it carries off the combat, and it's all very typical paint by numbers shonen. That's true, but it still has its own sort of characteristics that shine through. The the Chainsaw Man one was just like, oh well, and then they unga bunga fight each other and one of them loses type of thing. And
Yeah.
I can see more than its own character. I can see like it influences from other things mostly, but I'm not seeing anything that is, oh well, this is what makes a fight in Chainsaw Man really cool. I just see, oh well, this is clearly influenced by this, and this is clearly influenced by this, and so on. I'm just not. I'm not really that impressed by it, generally speaking. It's got potential, but it's been riding on potential for the last few weeks now. Maybe it works really well in the manga, and the adaptation is just not great because I haven't actually seen people talking much about the adaptation other than that they were excited for it.
Hmm.
It's not. People were definitely rhapsodizing about the manga for a long time, but I don't know if how they feel about the animated version. Maybe it just doesn't adapt well. There are some stories like that. They just don't adapt well. If the artist has a real flair for presentation, but the animators don't, then you can lose a lot in the translation.
Yeah. It's uh it's a thing. My opinion of it when I dropped it at the end of episode two was still the same as what I thought it would be at episode one. Something I would turn on if I needed something to just have going on the other monitor while I'm playing a game or something that I can occasionally
It's
look over.
totally fine, but it's only fine.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to wanting to really sink into watching a shonen, like I would rather pick up Hero Aka again because there's meat to it, and it's very silly in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of heart to it, and you can sort of see its character in everything that it does. It's very characterful. It's got its own distinctive way of doing things and presenting things that isn't like just plainly derivative. And Chainsaw Man does have its own sort of flavor, but it's sort of like just a combination of other things, as far as it looks to me. And I'm sure that this would get me murdered by a lot of its fans. Like, the people who defend it seem to have a really, really high opinion of it. But I don't know. I don't know what it is about it that has them so overheated on it. But it's perfectly watchable. Like, I'll probably keep watching it, but I'm not like excited for it the way I have been for other shows in the past. It's just okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Maybe it'll really pick up speed, like because there's stuff dangling in the background that is very, very obviously hinting at stuff for the future. Like, I'll be very disappointed if it turns out that Makima is in any way a straight shooter because she certainly doesn't act like it.
I can tell you, she's probably evil from the first like 2 episodes. Like, the
But
way
the thing is that if it was as straightforward as, oh well, she's just evil, I would also be disappointed because that's so bland.
yeah,
But everything else about the show so far has also been bland.
she's she's just too unnatural to be be normal.
Yeah, like, and that sort of obvious uncanniness is played up in every scene that she's in with conspicuous obviousness. Like,
It's,
it's like they're clearly placing her in such a position as to make her look as uncanny as possible in all cases. Supposedly the visual language is also quite intense as far as the starting sequence goes, in terms of hinting at stuff in the future. So maybe there's elements being hinted at in there. Like, I don't know anything about the story. The only obvious one is that scene in the opener where she feeds Denji a snail. Where it's like that snail, that you know how it's got really fat eye stalks.
I've only
I
seen
don't
the
know if you've
opening.
seen the opener.
I've
But
only seen
she feeds him a
points.
snail that has sort of like fat ring patterned eye stalks. That's actually a symptom of a parasite that snails get. That is one of nature's mind control parasites.
I see.
That's the only thing that I happen to notice in there. But yeah, so there's clearly stuff going on, but they are really, really taking too long to grab my interest with it. Like, the plot hooks are not there. They're moving at a slow pace, which may turn out in the future to have been very well advised, a very good idea, a thing that they ought to do. But currently it's just dragging,
As
as far as I'm concerned.
as a seasonal watchable, it does not have my recommendation. So from the bit I've seen,
I don't know, maybe they do intend to carry it on for another 200 episodes. I don't know.
I don't know how long it's gonna go. I don't know how long the manga is. By the way, I need to switch to yellows at some point.
That's fine. That's fine.
How many
You
blues you
switch,
got?
I'll just take whatever teleports you provide me with.
'Cause I think we've got over 20 blues.
I've got 34 in my inventory right now. So we've picked up 20.
This fate we'll go to. We're not going to the thing of clouds. Go to
Right, yeah. At any rate, so I'm still watching it, but I'm sort of underwhelmed by it. Yeah, I still don't see like the deep objection to the Arknights one either. Like, I watched another episode of it, and it's also like perfectly in line with expectations, is the way that I would characterize it. And I mean, it's a dark setting that I don't know a lot about because I didn't play it very much. But it's got a certain amount of character to it. It's just a bit overburdened by stuff that is evidence of its heritage. It's a little bit overburdened by it, but not any more than any other similar shows. So yeah, I'm okay with that. I guess I'll keep watching that. And Bleach as well. It's Bleach. It's got all the problems Bleach always did. There's not really any new ones being brought in. Although I gather that there was some. Oh no, I won't bother to talk about that because I'm not sure of the details. I might get something wrong. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to talk about because I was too busy this week. So I'll just leave it there.
well, it sounds like we do a lot in Pinecone because we can stretch our talking about it out a lot. The reality is, it just doesn't cover that much physical time in our week because we can literally do everything we say on bathroom breaks.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Although, I mean, there's still a lot of other stuff that needs doing. Like, I'm gonna probably sit down and watch the event story tonight, and I'll watch a bit more of the base story because the whole story's been opened up now,
yep.
and you've got to sort of grit your teeth and get through it because you only have until the main event happens to get caught up, or you'll miss out. I
Yeah,
don't know what it is that you'll miss out on, but I don't want to miss out.
yeah. I was planning to go through it this week. Now taxes are over. I didn't want to go through and get caught up on the story while I was exhausted from taxes. I do
Yeah.
like the Pinecone story. I think you're actually ahead of me now, but I don't
I'm
exactly
not.
remember.
I'm probably about the same point. I haven't had time to watch any more lately, so yeah, I'll find time to watch some of it. But I very much like to take my time with these stories. I don't like hurrying through them. I want if they've gone to the effort to voice act everything, I want to sit and enjoy the voice acting.
Yeah,
So
as always when it comes to stuff and me playing video games, I don't like to hurry, but I like to just keep going, like the Energizer Bunny, if at all possible. And that's not possible when you got taxes hanging over you. Segues into my week if you don't have anything else.
no, I don't really.
So my week was the continuation of tax hell because it never stops. It's always going. They call it tax season for a reason, folks. And yeah, just been a gigantic pain in the butt. I mean, it's the same pain in the butt it's always been for the same reasons I've said every single week. Gotta do a whole bunch of busy work for the federal government, go chase down their forms because they can't just, mail these to you or something sensible, even though we pay them quite a bit of money to supposedly operate. But no, can't do that. You got to go chase them all down. You got to fill them all out. They don't have this information on file last year, except where they totally do sometimes. And you can autofill some forms, but not all of them, but the ones you can submit online anyway. And then the CPA calls you back and says, "Hey, this, and this don't look right in your QuickBooks. Please tell me what the fuck they are." Ugh. And then you got to go back and fix it. And then they call you back and say, "This Amex charge is this? We got to write this as a loan to individual and find a way to pay it back." Okay, I'll figure it out. Okay, could you just pretend this thing was ceiling repair? That was actual advice I got this week.
Good grief!
That's
You get
how
rid of that guy.
that's how bad American taxes are, and how bad the opossum is by proxy. Um, and it just never stops. I've finally got them fairly complacent. I think they said there'll be one more pour over. Well, they'll have a few minor things for me to look at next week, and then they'll be done. I'll be free until next year when I get to do it all again because it never stops. It's always coming back. It's always going to be a looming specter in the future. And every year, how much I hate the federal government grows a little bit more. Ugh. So that's been work. And this is on top of my normal workload. My workload has not been small this week at all. It has actually been a zoo at work. And I've had to deal with that on top of the taxes. And we just have a ton of small jobs and a lot of customers with questions that should know better but don't, that are calling me constantly or sending me emails that need answering, where I've got to get 50 different quotes out to Southern Pipe, Ferguson, and whoever else is asking for a quote on this same job. Ferguson's asking me for the same quote 3 times from 3 different people because they can't communicate internally, and I have to sit there and almost chew them out on the telephone because I've quoted this thing 3 times to 3 different people at your company. Why don't you guys share files? Shouldn't really do that to a customer, but it's a bad week to get on my bad side. I think I made the excuse when I started to get a little loud with them. Ah, sorry, it's tax season. It's getting to me. And the guy on the phone was like, "Oh, that I understand." I was like, "Oh, okay, good." Hopefully, I didn't piss him off too much. And just gotta keep managing the factory and being that guy that calls up our rep and go, "Hey, Tim, this order was supposed to go out 2 weeks ago. Where is it? I got 3 customers that are pestering me about it. They've now got their customers calling me. What the heck is going on down there? We just haven't got any stainless steel, man. I don't know what to tell you. We're trying. I know you're trying. Give me a reason I can tell them to shut them up."
Biden did it.
Unfortunately, that one is not a standard business response, although I really wish it was. Because it's the
The
truth.
correct response.
It's the truth. But as with many things in the world nowadays, just because it's true, that often means you're not allowed to say it. So work has just been a pain. I've been getting up at way too early o'clock in the morning, and I've been working from sun up until sundown. And I will get home, and I would needed a video game to play. I did not get on Discord. I didn't even turn on Discord for 4 days this week. Like you might have noticed, I was just not here except for a little bit in the very early evenings, which was me just waking up usually because I had to get up that early some days. And then I decided, okay, I'm eventually going to get around to it anyway. I want to go through Bayonetta 3. So no matter what people are saying about it, and I've heard some pretty mixed things about it, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna purchase it and just do this thing. And so I did that, and I managed to chew through. I finished standard difficulty tonight or today, and finish the story because on the weekend I actually have time to not lose my mind, and just marathoned it from this morning until I started typing in the thing we're working on to get through the story. And so this game has one chronic problem when it comes to its storytelling, and that's the Bayonetta franchise has always been seeped in time travel and alternate universes. Well, specifically time travel and how that's screwed with everything. And their solution seems to be, oh well, alternate universes are what you're really doing when you time travel, because they had just written themselves into a corner where time travel just kind of screwed everything up. So they've soft retconned that into, oh, it's actually alternate dimension hopping. And this makes things very confusing because the game decides it doesn't have enough time to explain all of this in the game, in the actual story presented to you. And so the only way to figure out what the heck's going on is to go and read all the notes, which I have been flipping through and have not read all of them for yet, but I managed to infer a whole lot of things that the story just straight up doesn't tell you. Like, the Bayonetta you play as is not Bayo 1 or Bayo 2 Bayo. Those are two different Bayos from very similar but slightly different universes. Bayo 3 Bayo is the Cereza from Bayonetta 1 that gets carried around as a little girl. And there is nowhere in the game that will explain this to you unless you read the notes. And you have to go digging for them. So I'll just go ahead and spoil that for you now. Because you're not going to find it. Nobody's going to read the notes that thoroughly. And once you understand that, the story starts making a whole lot more sense. But they just, for some reason, decided not to tell you this. Just not told anywhere in the main story. You have to go digging for it. I don't know why companies insist on doing this with their stories and games. It really drives me nuts. So, let's see. What else?
I don't know. You seem to like it when Yoko Taro does it.
I like it when Yoko Taro does weird stuff, and he does put a lot of stuff hidden in the extra stuff. And Dark Souls does it for its storytelling, but Dark Souls story isn't a part that has unskippable bits in it. It is 100% optional there. Bayonetta is special in character action games that you will have to re-sit through large chunks of the story if there's a QuickTime event in that cutscene because it won't let you skip it until after the QuickTime event. And the story cutscenes are long in Bayonetta 3. Very long. And for a character action game anyway. Like, there was one that was at least like 15 minutes. And big punctuated fights are broken up by multiple cutscenes in the middle of them. Like, they're really trying to sell the flair of a presentation here that you watch and that you engage with in the manner you would a story of some kind. Oh, the Fallout, right. And number one, I just don't think the Platinum Games writing team has the chops to pull that kind of thing off. Not by themselves. And their stories are always mediocre. Bayonetta's story's always been pretty mediocre. Bayonetta 2 was pretty good. Did you ever play Bayonetta 1 or Bayonetta 2?
I only played a little bit of Bayonetta 1. I own it, but I never made much progress because I tended to get a bit a bit frustrated and caught up in various things. Like I would try and do one of those challenges and just sort of get stuck on it, and then just face bash against it until I put it down.
some of the Alfheim challenges of Bayonetta 1 are infamous for how difficult they are. Like, even the top tier players will still fail some of them sometimes.
Yeah, that sort of thing is a problem for me because I assume that if it's there, then it must be possible to do, and I just need to work out how. Because I don't play a lot of this type of action game, it's not necessarily abundantly clear to me when something is just it's simply out of your range unless you're willing to spend like 50 hours practicing it.
Unless you're willing to sit down and get good, as they say, which takes a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I don't have that sort of time.
Yeah. I thankfully have a many years of loving and playing these games to fall back on for experience. So adjusting for difficult content in them is not no pun intended difficult. Well, not a pun. It's just the same word. But Bayo 1, the game was fairly simple. Looking back on it, it tried a whole lot of experimental things. All of them try experimental things. It seems to be a thing Kamiya is just addicted to. He can't not put weird experimental bullcrap in his games. Like, even going back to the original Devil May Cry, like the style meter as we know it was an invention of his, and was part of his charming experimental bullcrap. That one worked out. In Bayonetta 1, the gimmick, and Bayonetta 2 for that matter, is you can equip weapons to your hands and feet. And you have a punch button and a kick button, and depending on what direction you're holding the analog stick, whether you have an enemy targeted or not, and what weapon you have equipped to the limb, you push the associated limb's attack button, and it will do a thing. It will do
A thing.
it will do whatever move is associated with that input. And this was kind of novel because people were used to, just an attack button and directional inputs like with Devil May Cry before that, or being entirely weapon dependent, again like Devil May Cry, and having the ability to mix and match and even double up the weapons you have on your hands and feet for really wacky combos was neat and interesting. That was novel for the time. In reality, when you break it down, though, it's just ways to change what one button does, so that you have a colossal amount of options. It means most of the options are useless because they're nowhere near as efficient as some of the other ones. Like, nobody uses the rocket launchers in Bayonetta 2 or Bayonetta 1. They are a
Except
waste.
that one time that you use them for the lulls.
Yeah, like you get them and you use them to laugh, and then you put them away and never use them again. And so what you wind up with is things like the whip or the chainsaws or the sword are all everybody uses in Bayonetta 1 because it's just not super great game design. The quirk of it being experimental, not every aspect of it worked out.
Sometimes it seems like the game really wants you to use a particular weapon, though.
Yeah, it do. In fact, in Bayonetta 1, there are a few mandatory sections against fire enemies when you get your very first weapon, when you get the sword, where you have to use the sword, or you are going to be killing them very slowly with your guns. Bayonetta's guns did no damage in Bayonetta 1. It was a joke. So they do encourage you in that way. But the game in general was
I
just
remember getting the ice skates, and I was like, "What are these for?"
oh, those are great for mobility. You never attack with them except in very specific
Yeah, well, I
circumstances.
mean, they make you move fast, but it seemed like attacking with them was just a good way to get yourself hit.
Yeah, it was. They were terrible for attacking for the most part. They had a couple moves that were really good and one combo that you could use, but for the most part, the sword, the chainsaw, the whip, many better options. Even your fists. And yeah, it it had a few failings there, but for the most part, it got it right for a new action game. It didn't have anything really wacky. It did not have a double trigger mechanic. It had the you spent your magic meter on the torture attacks, where you would press both the attack buttons and throw an enemy into a special animation where Bayonetta would be invincible and deal a ton of damage to him. And you would lose magic if you got hit, though. So finding ways to weave this in and how to isolate and take out big enemies before you inevitably get hit was a fun part of early Bayonetta before you learned the fights by hand and it all just became routine. But
Doesn't it also have it has a slowing time mechanic as well, didn't it?
yeah, this is the big feature of Bayonetta that's been consistent in Witch Time, where when you dodge an attack, and you eventually unlock an upgrade to extend the window to a little bit after you've been hit. You get about 3 frames extra after an attack has already landed, where it'll still count for a dodge, and will nullify the damage and activate Witch Time. It's called Bat Within or something. Turns you into a swarm of bats, and just so the game says no, you didn't actually take that hit, and you activate Witch Time, which makes the game infinitely more playable because before then the game is really, really, really hard. And that's what a bunch of people I remember talking to about Bayonetta would come back with. Like, this game is brutally difficult. I just cannot get the dodge timing down. Like, just get to Bat Within. They literally give you an upgrade that doubles your dodge frames. And it makes the game so much more playable. And your amount of time you get to spend in slowed time is up to a maximum of 6 seconds in most of the games, and it depends on how closely you cut the dodge. So the closer you were to taking the hit, or if you activated Bat Within and had already taken the hit, you'll get the full 6 seconds. Otherwise, it's scaled down as the 7 or so frames you got before then kick in. If you dodge then and inputted the dodge that many frames early. So for an avoidance mechanic, it's nowhere near Royal Guard levels of difficult. It had a huge window, and especially with Bat Within. So I can't get on my mount because and it was a nice, interesting title, but there's nothing too much to write home about Bayonetta 1 with. The story was Bayonetta had amnesia. She woke up. She knew she was a witch. She was this confident lady with a weird beehive haircut, and she took her clothes off to summon big demons to squish things. And she goes through the game. She finds a little girl. The little girl is called Cereza, and looks conspicuously like Bayonetta. They eventually figure out that the other witch chasing her is actually Bayonetta's friend, who's been brainwashed by a guy named Balder. And Balder turns out to be Bayonetta's dad, and he wants to reawaken the angel's mega entity called Jubileus. And then Bayonetta goes through the hoops to save Cereza, send her back in time, relearn her past, and stomp on the big scary angel thing. And that's the story of Bayonetta 1. There ain't a whole lot to the story of Bayonetta 1. In Bayonetta 2, they tried to innovate on this concept. They put in a new mechanic because people were complaining that there was nothing to do with the magic meter aside from torture attacks, and torture attacks just sometimes weren't what you wanted to do. They wanted a double trigger like mechanic. There's a lot of people probably switch. It's going to make the fates harder, and there's a bunch of blue mages, particularly fighting with the for shatter targets. Yeah, let's switch to a red. Go to Battleshire and run out the south. And so they said, okay, we'll give you Umbran Climax. And this was the worst idea the franchise has ever had. Umbran Climax is the single most overpowered mechanic I've ever seen in a video game. So you know how when you were playing Bayonetta, it felt like, while some of the weapons hit marginally hard, what really hit were your Wicked Weaves or your finishers with whatever weapon you were using. That's where most of your damage came from. You had to get to the end of that combo string. What if I could just tap a button and every single one of my attacks was a Wicked Weave?
That like, all you ever did.
Yeah. And that's all you
just
did.
Try and get into that. You'd try to get to that stage, and then you'd just do that.
Yeah,
to do every fight.
And that's exactly what happened in Bayonetta 2. So, unless you're playing on Unlimited Climax, where the enemies just have too much health for that to take out the trash even, and you have to do proper combos and setups, and even then, it then becomes, this is where my burst window is, when I have enough magic meter to do this. It's just too powerful of a mechanic. And even worse, they give you a piece of Final Fantasy Magitech armor. They called the Witch's armor that you can drive around in. So you can drive Maggie-chan around and go squish things. And it hits even harder than your Wicked Weaves do. And eventually you get an upgrade that you can just replace Umbran Climax with this stupid mech thing.
Right.
Making Bayonetta high scores a joke. Or Bayonetta 2 high scores a joke, and outside of Unlimited Climax. Where the enemies could just no-sell your Wicked could weave spam. The demons especially just could auto dodge them. So they apparently had realized it was a mistake when they were trying to set up the harder difficulty and were like, "What can we do? We'll just make it so this mechanic doesn't do anything, and we'll make them have to use the torture attacks again." And honestly, I'm glad they did because it was just too busted. Unlimited Climax would have been no fun at all if Umbran Climax had been available. So that's their highest difficulty, by the way, is Unlimited Climax. So that was a dumb idea. The story, however, got a lot better in Bayonetta 2. Baldur was just kind of a cackling, maniacal, evil, crazy man in Bayonetta 1. And yeah, he was Bayonetta's dad, but that was just kind of like a cheap phoned in shock Luke, I am your father moment. And it didn't really hit.
Right.
In Bayonetta 2, we continue the time travel shenanigans where a younger Baldur gets brought into Bayonetta's time after she's already taken out her dad in Bayonetta 1 as the masked Lumen. And Bayonetta doesn't know who he is, just knows there's another Lumen Sage running around. They're supposed to be extinct. And she eventually finds out that, oh, actually, my dad really did love me the whole time. And it's because of the events of this game and what he does in this timeline. When he goes back in time, he'll be infected by an evil curse that'll make him go crazy. And that her dad was actually a bro. And is also voiced by my favorite English voice actor, Crispin Freeman. So he gets free points. But I'm biased. I don't know what to tell you. So, although it is, for those that don't know, Crispin Freeman does Kyrie in the Fate series, and he does Alucard in Helsing and Helsing Ultimate. That's where he got his big name making role. And hearing this guy make cheesy Bayonetta one-liners with his deep, intimidating voice that he has is accidentally the funniest thing in the world. When what are supposed to be really dramatic moments just turn into absolutely hilarious situations because he cannot deliver, the cheesy inspirational type of one-liner or "shut up, Kirk" speech or that other characters and voice actors can do. It's just not in his genes. His voice just ain't built for that. So it's just a comedy whenever he tries to do it, and he has to do it a lot near the end of that game. But it's a good character story. It finishes Bayonetta's story. It explains what the witch hunts were that ended the Lumen Sages and nearly made the Umbran witches extinct. Shows that Baldur was not the super comically evil bad guy of all time, because he really was just a cartoon character in the first game, and we were okay with that because Bayonetta is kind of a cartoony series, despite how sexual it can dress itself as. At its heart, it's a cartoon. Like, yeah, there's big gory scenes with the monsters chewing each other up and girls taking their clothes off to summon those monsters, but it just doesn't ring as anything other than cheesy and over the top. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well. Like, it's not. It doesn't feel like it's sexual in any way, shape, or form, and it doesn't feel like it's gory in any way, shape, or form.
It is sexual, but it's sexual in like the 12-year-old take on sexual, where it's just sort of it's just another kind of dick and fart joke, basically.
Yeah, it's just there to add to the ham factor. It's not there to be quote sexy unquote.
It's not really titillating because it's so silly.
Yeah, and even the demons chewing each other up. These big monsters made of hair, and you can see the hair. Like, they're still silly. They look like Muppets. So the series has always had a bit of silliness to it. But aside from Umbran Climax, Bayonetta 2 is the best game in the series so far. As a spoiler alert, it's if you can just ignore Umbran Climax, which I did start doing after I realized just how busted it was. These are just the kind of, I don't like having to do this type of thing with the game, but sometimes it's just necessary. Where there is a good game underneath here if it wasn't for this one thing, and I just have to force myself not to do that one thing. And I don't like doing it, and sometimes I can't stop myself from doing it. But in Bayonetta's case, I like the base game enough with Bayonetta 2 that I was willing to fully pure platty the game. That means platinum medals for time, damage taken, and combo achieved on every single encounter in the game on every single difficulty. So I pulled a full S rank like I do with the Devil May Cry games. I did not do this with Bayonetta 1. I only platinum ranked the hardest difficulty and beat Radon because you always got to beat Radon. You haven't beat
He had lung cancer by the time you did.
Oh yeah, he smoked so many cigarettes from using his super on me. You got 3 frames to dodge that thing. I looked it up. Like that thing hurts. It doesn't just hurt, it kills you outright if it hits you. But it's he's tough. In Bayonetta 2 he's tough. He's really tough. I haven't got to him in Bayonetta 3 yet. But now we get to Bayonetta 3. And the story has completely gone off the rails where I don't really know what's happening. Like I could follow the character story of Bayonetta, whose name is Cereza, through Bayonetta 1 and 2 fairly okay. It made sense. Bayonetta 2, I thought, what actually told a serviceable and good story. I don't want to spoil Bayonetta 2 for people, so that's why I'm being kind of vague about it. And if they haven't played it yet, Bayonetta 1's pretty much a nothing burger for story. You can honestly skip it. And but Bayonetta 3 just doesn't know where to go from here. So we go full retard into the alternate universe thing. And right away, you see it opens with a cutscene of Beehive Bayonetta, the original Bayonetta, which you at first would think is the original Bayonetta, but it actually turns out not to be. It's another alternate Bayonetta who was not the original Beehive Bayonetta. We see her much later. And you can tell this in retrospect because she doesn't have the little mole that Beehive Bayonetta does. And you see her just get killed by this game's big bad right away in the prologue. And Ugly Rocker Chick watches her die and gets sent to another universe that hasn't been invaded by this current villain of the week named Singularity, who is they don't explain what he is very well. If you read the notes, he's apparently an artificial intelligence developed in some world that decided he just wanted to assimilate the power of all the other universes because computers are evil or something.
Oh no, not computers.
It doesn't explain it very well in the notes that I've read through. Maybe something else gives clarity later in a note I haven't found yet or in a note on another entry. I have not read all the notes. They do not explain this anywhere, what Singularity is. Because if you're just reading this, watching the story in front of you, he's just a dude in a wheelchair who can go Super Saiyan and has really been orchestrating the events the whole time, and it makes no sense at all. Don't worry, that's probably vague enough not to spoil anything.
He's the guy from Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne.
Steven? No, he's not Steven. He wishes he was Steven. He wishes he was as cool as Steven. But no, he's just a affably nice old man in a synthetic body inside of a pod that has to be wheeled around, and he can move it as long as it's on a flat surface like a wheelchair.
Oh no, he's a pod person.
Yeah, he's literally a pod person. And he kills the fake out Beehive Bayonetta. And Viola's the name of the little rocker girl. She gets sent across universes to another universe, and we get introduced to another Bayonetta. And by now we've established there are multiple Bayonettas, so your first question is, which one is this one? The game will imply heavily, but not outright state, that this Bayonetta is the little Cereza that ran around with you in Bayonetta 1 as when you were playing as Beehive Bayonetta. It doesn't outright say that, but it's very heavily implied that's the case. So you go around with her, trying to find a way to stop Singularity by getting into his universe, by collecting MacGuffins from various other alternate universes that he is currently in progress attacking. So you wind up going to like Shibuya in regular ass Tokyo, because of course we got to go to regular ass Tokyo. And
in Shibuya specifically.
Yeah, and you get to see a 1-to-1 recreation of the Devil May Cry 1 scene where Dante messes with the spider Phantom, and you get to unlock the demon equivalent in this game as a demon partner. And then you go to not really China, but kind of China. If it had a bit more it's ancient China with a bit more of an industrial theme to it. So they have more mechanized cannons and weaponry and stuff. But other than that, it's just China on the Great Wall of China, where a big battle's taking place against all the monsters. And the demon you get here is the best demon in the game. It's just a choo-choo train.
I see.
It's terrible. I like it. Actually, will probably turn out to be one of the most busted ones in the game. But for casual play and just trying to intuit my way through what's best for me, it is the worst gameplay wise because the way it works is you can call it when you equip it as your demon, and it will let you lay tracks on the ground. It'll auto activate witch time, but you can't do anything except lay tracks. And these tracks will send the train down wherever they go. And you can put flags on the track to make the train stop and do stuff like shoot its cannons or thrash around.
It
It's a
sounds comically overcomplicated.
it is, and there's ways you can lay special track configurations with forward back punch motion. It is much of a muchness, but you do get to summon a choo choo train, and that's really cool. So I'll forgive it. And it's the only weird. Well, that's not true. There's one more weird one, but it's not quite as bad with its gimmick. And then where do we go after that? You go to ancient Egypt. You get to get ancient Egypt Bayonetta, and we finally get to use Malphas, who the bird from the first game, who was just a boss finisher and never mentioned again, finally made his reappearance as a partner demon for this game. And then we go to France. And this is the last alternate reality we go to. And funnily enough, the French Bayonetta is the only one that's douchebaggy enough to attack regular Bayonetta that you're playing as. Instead of talking
Well, I mean,
to
it's
things,
French.
that I'm like, oh, I bet you Vol would say that's totally just like the French. Of course, they would attack us on sight. So here you are faked out, and what demon you're going to get to partner with. It's they put you with this bat thing that can let you see in the dark and has a whole lot of moves it can use in the air and lightning and projectiles it can shoot. But then they fake you out where this thing is actually working for French Bayonetta and adds a whole extra chapter you have to go through because it steals your MacGuffin at the end. And instead you get partnered with French Rosa, who is Bayonetta's mom demon, which is just a literal clock tower that you can just summon in the middle of the battlefield. And
I see.
you can give it a command to perform many silly actions. Like the little thing that walks out of the cuckoo clock.
Yes.
You can have the clock tower collapse back until the face is all that's on the ground is on ground level, and have stuff walk out of the cuckoo clock to punch things. It can literally grow arms to rock 'em sock 'em robots with people, and it has cannons and guns all over the place. It's just a ridiculous clock tower. And if you can get an enemy to hit its bell by accident, which is really high up in the air by default, so it's pretty hard to get them to hit it. But if they do accidentally hit it, you get a free witch time activation.
I see.
So you may be wondering, how the heck are you summoning these things on the field, and how does that work as a gameplay mechanic? Because that is the big downfalling of this game. Remember Umbran Climax, and how it was basically the only way to do damage in that if you wanted to play efficiently in Bayonetta 2 that I mentioned. What if we made that even worse?
Oh. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't have good things to say about the gameplay.
So is this like when you got a really broken summon in Kingdom Hearts, and so you would just spam that to kill every boss?
It's even worse. They have toned down the damage the demons deal compared to Umbran Climax. It is not as ridiculous as those. But to compensate, they've nerfed your normal attack damage down to toilet paper levels. You hit like a wet noodle. So the only thing that matters is demon attacks. And when I say you can summon demons, there are two ways you can do it now. Madama Butterfly is still your Wicked Weave if you have your default weapon equipped. But you can equip a different demon instead, and you can have up to 3 you can cycle between, equipped at a time. And they will replace the Wicked Weaves at the end of your combo strings with unique battle effects and special finishers. That would have been fine if that's where we stopped, but we didn't stop there. Instead, we have the mechanic. You remember when the trailers first came out, and I specifically said this mechanic of controlling the demon looked really wonky, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I was right. It's really wonky. What you do is you press the R2 button on a Pro controller, and Bayonetta will stop whatever she's doing, interrupt her combo, interrupt whatever animation she's in, and start dancing. And she will summon the demon. And as long as you have L2 held down, and do not press the dodge button because that'll cancel it, every single input you make is controlling the demon and not Bayonetta.
I see.
And Bayonetta is completely vulnerable during this state, so she can still be attacked, although you can dodge in the middle of this state, so you're not.
And how does the camera feel about all this?
The camera isn't too bad about it unless the demon gets really far out there, but most of the arenas are too small for this to be a problem. It is at a wonky angle, but I've never had a problem seeing anything. Although Bayonetta as a franchise has not invented this technology Devil May Cry had figured out back in Devil May Cry 4, which was if an enemy is off camera, don't let it start an attack. Make sure its first priority is to get on camera, and then it can start an attack. It can go right off screen right afterwards. That's perfectly okay in Devil May Cry, according to its rules. But it has to get to the camera first. You are not allowed to be caught by something you can't see. Bayonetta has no such generosity with its combat system. Which means sound is mandatory when you're playing this game if you want to perfect the missions. Now, in Bayonetta 2, this didn't really matter so much because you could just position yourself so you could see all the enemies. In Bayonetta 3, you can't see crap at this camera angle. You can see whatever your demon's attacking, and you can see the general area in a wonky field between Bayonetta and it. And with Bayonetta taking up a goodly chunk of the screen. But you can't tell what's behind you. So, unless you put yourself in a corner deliberately, which you're not going to be doing most of the time, because the way Bayonetta's combo system works, it's not like Devil May Cry's. If you're going for high-scoring combos, you don't, build up to an S rank and lose a little bit of progress or drop down a letter grade if you hit with the same attack too many times, or if you don't hit for a while. That ain't, or if you get hit, you drop a couple. That ain't how this works at all. Bayonetta doesn't care very much about using the same attack. It'll still reward you more for diversifying your attack. And it does not care even if you take damage. The only thing the combo cares about is how long it's been since you last hit something. And it never stops scaling in Bayonetta and has been like this since the first game. Where the longer your combo is, the bigger the multiplier is, and it continues to grow forever. Going up by like 5% bonus score every 2 seconds or so. So you're incentivized to keep this thing going as long as possible, and the only reason people don't cheese out fights by making one combo that lasts forever and is really safe is because there's a time requirement to get the platinum medal. So you finding a happy medium is where you got to be with that. Now, with the big demons in the way there, you have to just kind of summon them to go into their combos optimally. That's what the game clearly thinks you're going to do as a player. Problem is, you can't see anything when you do that. It is very easy to lose track of where the heck Bayonetta is in the middle of the confusion of combat, and it is very easy to lose track of the demon and where it's pointed if you're trying to focus on the enemies, because the camera angle is so wonky. And furthermore, the demons don't have very interesting combos. At most, they have a 1-2-3 punch, a kick, a forward back motion on punch and kick, and a circle motion on punch and kick, and a shoot button. And that's it. That's all of them. And most of them, you gotta level up with upgrade points quite a bit before you get any of those directional inputs I mentioned, so it's just the 1-2-3 punch kick combo. That's it. That's all they can do. So you just pick the one that's doing the most damage for the situation. There's very little thought that goes into which demon do you want to use. The Choo Choo Train is novel in that it plays differently. laying the tracks and then sending it to go auto do its thing. And as long as you don't get hit while it's rolling on the tracks, it will continue to run through those tracks very quickly and do its thing. And then the Clock Towers novel, because of just how wacky it is for a stationary thing that you can get so many weird effects out of. But all the other demons are just beat sticks. They move faster or slower and hit harder or slightly less or attack more frequently, have an easier time hitting in the air and all that jazz. But they're just beat sticks. And you'll probably find your favorite after about, once you unlock them all, about 10 minutes of experimenting. So I do not like this mechanic. I hate that they have nerfed normal combat to accommodate this mechanic, because when you get to a point in a boss fight when the boss is open and you can get your big damage in, you don't have room for creative combo expression. What you have is a demon summon button that does 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah, it seems like this happens in most action games though. There are very few that avoid it. Like they will either make it so spamming like normal strong over and over again is the optimal way to play, or just using the specials exclusively is the optimal way to play. Very few seem to be able to walk the line properly. Like it was a problem that you see in particularly in a lot of recent Musos where your normal attacks just don't pay off compared to just using your various special abilities. They had it particularly bad in Fate Extella was probably the most egregious example where the in uh in Fate Extella the more recent one, I can't remember what the
The one with
subtitle
Charlemagne
was.
in it.
Yeah, the one with Charlemagne in it. There was literally no reason to use any regular attacks at all because you had so many special abilities. There was nothing stopping you from just spamming them for eternity. You never had to actually hit with normal attacks. It didn't serve any purpose to do so either.
Yeah.
So it got really, really, really badly out of hand. Um, and that was sort of like an egregious example of it. And it was just because they were experimenting with the new ability system, which meant that there was no role left for regular attacks. So they put all this effort into doing the animations for them, but then there was just never any need to actually use them. But it's something that Muso games have suffered from a lot. I feel like there are a couple of Dynasty Warriors that avoided it, and the normal attacks were balanced quite well with the special attacks because they themselves would get more powerful as you were able to build up longer combo strings. Like I know that in there was a meter in whatchamacallit, Dynasty Warriors 6? Was it 4 or was it 6? I think it was 6. There was a meter that built up as you played that you would accumulate meter. It was constantly draining, but you charged it as you were hitting. And it would go up ranks, and as you went up ranks, you would get additional hits would be added to the end of your attack strings, which as the further up in the ranks of it that you got, the more big and powerful and explosive the abilities would get. And if you took hits, you would lose ranks. If you stopped fighting, you would lose ranks, so on and so forth. But that basically meant that there was an end game for the weaker attacks, and it wasn't all about just, oh well, you just need to charge up to whatever special mode you've got access to and use that. So that approach works, and I feel like Sengoku Basara had also balanced the regular combo strings right so that they had a role as well. But it seems to be a problem with action games where they want a lot of flash and bang to your combos, but as they ladle on the special moves, eventually the other ones stop being useful at all, and you end up just finding an optimal move to spam.
Yeah. And the only game I've felt, the only franchise, I know I sing its praises all the time. I know you guys know I like it so much. But there's a reason for that. Devil May Cry has struck a really good balance with this. And that most of the weapons can put out the same level of damage, and most of their combos can are not proper combos. They don't have functional special moves. Like you have drive and stuff, but it's just another tool in Rebellion's toolkit. And you have the closest thing they've gotten is Sin Devil Trigger in Devil May Cry 5. And even that's a huge risk because it means you're not allowed to use Devil Trigger. You can't get your health back. You can't do quick double trigger cancels. You're giving up something for one big powerful burst that will last exactly 6 seconds, and it will take you half of the level to build up.
But I watched Gura play, and as far as I can tell, the only thing Rebellion does is Stinger.
Yeah, you can still get away with Stinger spam. It's Stinger is the casual crutch, but when we're talking about character action games, especially, expression is a big part of it. Learning to play the character the way you want to play them, that you have the most fun doing, is very important and a very liberating thing in these games. And
Which
what,
is to say, use only Gilgamesh all the time.
yeah, well, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's you. That's the thing about the character action games. It doesn't matter how you get the score. It doesn't matter how you get that S rank, as long as you did it and you figured out a way to do it. And every path you can think of to get there is viable. Some are just harder than others. Like,
Not in Dino May Cry, they're not. You
no,
just get
not
handed out S ranks for free
not in Dino May Cry. You get handed S ranks for free, or you get told to F off because whatever weapon you want to use for that moment doesn't work on this enemy type.
because it's the wrong color.
Yeah. Golly, how could you screw this up? So Bayonetta 3 has effectively stomped on this. It just comes down to this stupid demon summoning mechanic. The way you build resource for it, you have a magic meter that fills up as you do normal attacks, but it starts every mission full. Oh, I guess that's already done. But it starts every mission full, and you only drain a tiny part of it to summon the demon, and a little bit with all of its attacks, and it loses a good chunk when he gets hit. They also can rampage if they take way too much damage, and then they just go out of control and will hit Bayonetta and the enemy and do whatever the heck they want for a while until they die. But that's not really an issue because you're not going to be summoning them ideally for a very long amount of time, unless you really can just wail on this particular trash pack that you're fighting. Then you'll just keep going for as long as you can. But this magic meter just doesn't drain enough. The magic meter you have at the end of the game is about 7 times too big. So the demon is always available and always an option. And the ability to just hold the L2 button and send Gamora after them or something to go chew on their faces is too easy.
So what you're saying is it's Pokemon the action game.
Yeah, it's like, what demon do you like the animations of? Okay, send that one to go chew on their face.
But you don't play as Bayonetta in this Bayonetta game.
Not for most of it. Not if you want to play optimally. And if the magic meter was just smaller and the damage on your basic weapons a little higher, this whole problem could have been rectified. But they just wanted to sell this gimmick too much. And it's a shame because the weapons in Bayonetta 3 are some of the most fun in the series. You could get a lot of mileage if these things didn't hit like wet noodles. I love the yo-yos. She gets buzzsaw yo-yos that she can put. That she doesn't have. You don't have hands and feet anymore either. Your kicks are always. You always can only have what would be the equivalent of equipping 2 sets of the same weapon in the previous games. So it gets equipped to your hands and your feet. You can't independently set them, but that's fine honestly because the weapons they've come up with are good enough and diverse enough on their own. You got these yo-yos that she attaches to her feet and her hands, and she can buzz around the arena and skate on them and use them to move really fast. And each weapon also lets you, for your mobility option. I saw the Bayonetta turning into a demon mechanic and worried. This one I didn't have to worry about as much because that is only used as a mobility option in combat. And what type of mobility do you want? And it's tied directly to the weapon you have equipped. So it's, in theory, balanced for that weapon. So, like with the yo-yos, you turn into the spider. And the spider moves really fast on the ground and can wall crawl. So you can latch onto a wall with the spider and get an extra wall jump that way and get up higher on an enemy to start beating on their head. Now, you don't stay as in your spider form after you start attacking. The only attack you ever do when you're equipped with a weapon in the demon form is the animation finisher will briefly change you into that form for the really long combo strings, and the double tap dash attack, your stinger equivalent, is always going to be dashing forward in whatever demon form you're in some way, and the dash is slightly different for all of them. So that's fine. So the yo-yos turn you into the spider, and you can web at people, and you can they can throw sticky webs out to replace your guns. and that you can chain these little buzzsaw yo-yos into crazy combos that have many, many hits in them because you can just leave them walking the dog on the target forever, and it's good fun. A lot of fun stuff. And then you got Gamora finally gets his weapon revealed, which is just a giant effing hammer that just hits things really good. And for a big dumb hammer, it's a lot of fun to use because it has a rocket booster on it. So you can go flying around the stage while you use it, and while its attacks are slow to come out, it is a surprisingly mobile weapon that lets you move all over the place. And its gun is just you flip the hammer upside down, and there's a cannon on the other side.
I see.
So there's a lot of cool weapons like that. You get I'm not going to detail them all, but I could go on, and it's just a shame that they're all worthless. Like there's potential here with this weapon set. You could have done something great. As usual, the theme is missed potential this show. There is so much combat depth you can do if you just choose to ignore the demon summoning mechanic, I guess. But you're never, ever, ever going to get a platinum time medal by doing that. It is not like Umbran Climax, where it was generous enough with the time requirements that you could get away without pushing that button, even though that button was busted. The time requirements are strict enough in Bayonetta 3 that you cannot get away without summoning the demon. If you want that platinum medal, you have got to summon a demon at least once every fight. And if I would not have a problem with the demons, even the way they are and the way they're implemented, if that magic meter was much smaller and drained faster and grew slower, because then they would just be extensions to combos. They would be an option you could pull out to do to put the boss in hit stun for things that normally can't be hit stun, because they do that. That's already built into their kit. Because of course they can also stun bosses, just in case it wasn't overpowered enough of a mechanic. Maybe they can't.
I presume that they were really just trying to hedge against it being something that people didn't use because they were saving it.
Yeah, the problem is they've made it too good, and they've made the time requirement so strict you can't opt not to use it. Believe me, I wish I could. If I could just opt not to use this demon summoning mechanic, I would probably have a good time with gameplay of Bayonetta 2, or in one thing I haven't talked about yet. And but it just completely muddies the whole combat system and makes it not feel anywhere close to as good to play as Bayonetta 2 without Umbran Climax. So if you want what I think is the most fun Bayonetta game for both a casual player and an experienced player, though experienced players don't use Umbran Climax, go play Bayonetta 2. If you want big spectacle monster fights, you can play Bayonetta 3. It depends on what you're looking for, I guess. But in a franchise known for being a character action game series, I'm looking for good gameplay above all else. And this is where the game has let me down the most. So, little disappointed there. It's still playable. I don't want it to sound like this game's a train wreck design-wise. It's not a platinum flop or colossal disaster like some of their projects have been. It's not a Babylon's Fall here. But it just is not up to the standard of that Bayonetta has set for itself. And I did not want to have to say that, but I kind of knew in my heart of hearts that's exactly what I would have to say once I picked up this game and knew I was going to buy it, even before I booted it up. Then we have my last problem with the game, and that's Viola. I've saved the worst for last. So
she's exactly as obnoxious?
No,
or worse?
Her character actually isn't as bad as I thought it was. It's everything else about her that is even worse, somehow. So, first off, Viola's a Zoomer in 90s rocker outfit, which makes
But
for...
Zoomers hate that crap.
Yeah, I know. It's a weird clash in your brain when you see it. But that's who she be. And Viola is a dork. She is not cool. She is not... They don't attempt to portray her as cool. She has more record scratches in the middle of her theme song when she screws up trying to be cool than any other character in an action franchise I've seen. Like, her theme song will just cut off and there will be the comical record scratch effect when she tries to charge in with her sword and do something and gets bitch slapped across the arena.
So she's the gag character?
No, she's played as a serious witch in training from another universe that Bayonetta was teaching from wherever she's from. They don't show her universe; it's already been destroyed, and follows the Cereza Bayonetta around like a lost puppy, trying to get her approval the whole game. And she's actually kind of endearing personality wise. Eventually, I don't mind her personality. I cannot get over her outfit. I don't care what her personality is like. I don't care that her character turned out to be better. She is just ugly 2000 aesthetic rainbow hair. And that just ruins it on a character level. Like, yeah, great. They didn't screw the story up for a new character. Why does it have to look like that? And that's always going to be hanging over my head when I think about this character.
But this why would they dress the character like that anyway? Because that sort of cringy outfit wouldn't be a good way to get Bayonetta's approval, and it sounds like she lives for Bayonetta's approval.
She does live for Bayonetta's approval, but she also has a tone with Bayonetta. Like, it's not just a phase mom. Like, she has the obnoxious teenager attitude still. Even more so
I
a teenager than
see.
Nero was in Devil May Cry 4 at time. But she's at least trying to be better and will take what other people say into consideration, unless they forget her name, because her gimmick is saying that her name is Viola and you're going to remember it because, everybody in Bayonetta gives people nicknames and this apparently annoys her. So,
Honestly, the whole thing just sounds kind of like an underwhelming experience in total. Like when it
oh,
all comes together, the parts just
don't fit
don't.
as yeah, they don't mesh as well as they have in the past for this franchise. I think that is an accurate assessment. But I'm saving the best of Viola for last, and by the best I mean the worst. Her gameplay is
Oh, she's a point of view character, is she?
she has 3 story missions that are all her, where you only control her, and oh boy is she bad. So the way Viola works, she has a katana because of course she does, and she can attack with this katana with the punch and kick button. But the kick button will always send the katana away from Viola's body, and she'll throw it around and whip it around like a boomerang. And it'll zip around her and do all kinds of weird, sword throwy stuff. It can rotate around her, it can go out and come back. It can go forward and in a straight line and then curve, kind of like that's the kind of stuff the kick button. And the pattern
Is
it
she?
flies out and the way it moves and how fast it comes out is all dependent on the input.
So she's a Jedi and she can make her lightsaber fly around.
Well, here's the problem. When she does that, she doesn't have any way to defend herself because, unlike Bayonetta, she can't get witch time from dodging, and her dodge is pitiful. So she has to block. And you can't block with your fists in Bayonetta's universe, apparently.
But she
So,
doesn't hold on to her weapon.
but she chucks her weapon all over the place. And it gets even worse. Because, remember that demon summoning mechanic that is the core of doing damage? Viola still has it. The problem is, her implementation is somehow even worse than Bayonetta's. She has one demon, singular. No options to change if you don't like how Cheshire fights. You're using the stupid cat. And the way it works is she has to chuck her sword, as in get rid of her only means of defense, away from her to go throw it on the ground somewhere to summon Cheshire at that location, who thankfully does splash damage when he's summoned, so you can sometimes accidentally keep your combo up. I get the feeling learning how to do that consistently is about the only way to play her like a real character. And then you hold down the L2 button, but you're still in control of Viola. But as long as you keep the L2 button held down, you've got Cheshire out doing stuff. And this sounds really OP, except for the part where Cheshire's retarded. Cheshire is completely useless when controlled by the AI. He never ever seems to go for the target I want him to. And when he does go for the target I want him to, he always will do like one hit and then just stare at it. And just
So basically, she has a follower from Skyrim.
yeah. So Cheshire is brain damaged. Is the long and short of that, and he is unfortunately your only option, and there ain't no fixing that AI. It's just really bad. So throwing the sword is a death sentence, except for the part where Cheshire is still your best source of damage if you want to do damage. It is so bad online. I went and looked up how to play Viola because I was doing something obviously wrong. And no, no, no. Cheshire's just that stupid. And the best solution, if you can't get Cheshire to work, is the only combo that's worth using with her is punch, punch, kick, punch, and then summon Cheshire at the very end of it for his special finisher at the end of that combo. And just do that over and over and over again in an attempt to block and get the perfect timing for Witch Time, which would be fine, except because it never stops. Viola's block timing is stricter than Devil May Cry 4 Royal Guard Dante. I'm not kidding. It's a whole frame shorter. And what's worse, because it keeps going, it never stops. What's even worse is that Viola, in this block animation, you know when you're playing Bayonetta, you tap the dodge button when you see an attack coming, and you've dodged. You know the dodge animation is
Yeah.
playing, you know you're going to come out of the dodge, and your muscle memory has trained you. That's the entire function of hitting the avoid damage button that you need to worry about. Well, slight problem. Viola does not activate Witch Time unless you continue to hold that avoid damage button after the hit has already connected with her sword. And so your muscle memory for the entire game is working against you every time you play Viola. Because you are trained to immediately get onto another button to keep the combo going with Bayonetta. Because you cannot leave yourself not doing damage. Dodges do extend your combo timer slightly, but they don't keep it going forever. You can't infinite dodge offset, despite what the MLG pros will tell you. Those people are not human. So you're trained to immediately go into an attack or try and make yourself safe after a dodge. With Viola's case, after you've taken the hit, you have to confirm the hit was taken by continuing to hold the button until Witch Time activates. And if Witch Time doesn't activate and you just got a normal block, too bad, so sad, try again. And the enemy's also going to reset his attack pattern, by the way. And pick a different attack. He won't continue down the same attack string. If you normal block the first attack, you'll just take no damage. It's just obnoxious. And while I think there is a way to continue her combos or freeze her combos while she's blocking, but it's really obtuse. Like after the hit has been confirmed and you go into Witch Time after you've been holding the block button, if you press a corresponding attack button to an available attack she can do, she will perform. I only got silver for that.
Yeah, so did I. Well, I couldn't tag anything.
Yeah, we got the derp squad out here again. This is why I moved last time. I still need more yellows. Let's go check the snowy area again. And
See what have I got? I've got 50 red, 37 yellow, 35 blue.
so the timing on this block being as strict as it is, getting into Witch Time Viola is a nightmare. Remembering to hold the button is a nightmare because your muscle memory the whole game trains you to let go of the dodge button because number one, you may need to hit it again as Bayonetta. You may need to do chain dodges. You may screw up. And panic dodging is an option if you just don't know what to do. You got 3 dodges before you spin out. And you just can't do that with Viola. And it is just incredible how badly your muscle memory will kill you with Viola. And the timing on it is so strict. You will feel immediately that, holy crap, this is hard. And there is a particular Alfheim challenge, one of the secret missions you were talking about earlier, where you are only allowed to do damage to enemies in Witch Time with Viola, and you have to kill 6 enemies in a time limit. This took a whole evening.
That doesn't sound like a productive use of time.
No, this was me being bullheaded. I spent an hour and a half on this thing. All my free time that day went to this one challenge. And to be fair, half of that time was spent frantically Googling what the am I doing wrong with Viola? And the answer was no, that's just how she be.
Not really doing very much to endear herself.
No. So yeah. Just Viola is the biggest disappointment in the game. Thankfully, her missions are short, and there's only 3 of them. And the only part that'll be a bugbear when trying to do the hardest difficulty is that one challenge, and I have no idea how the F I'm going to do.
So you're going to follow up and do it?
I will see what Unlimited Climax is like at least, and we'll probably complete it. I don't know. I'm definitely not going for all difficulties, all pure platinum. That's off the table already. I don't like the game enough for that. But I might do a platinum run of Unlimited Climax. That's still on the table for now until I lose my mind. So yeah, that's my impressions of the gameplay at Bayonetta 3. And it sounds really negative because it is just overshadowed by the parts that are negative for gameplay. And for you casual people that are not as into the technical aspects of these games and just want to see the characters do stuff, you can probably get something out of this game. This game will not lose any points with you. But as somebody that has played character action games and likes them a lot and still plays them as much as I can whenever a new one comes out, it is just disappointing when a franchise that I used to love doesn't live up to its potential. Like I really liked Bayonetta 1 back in the day. Everything was novel and weird, and looking back, some of it didn't quite work out. But for the time, I had a great time with it, and it led the way to a lot of cool stuff. Like the way it does its codex entries, for instance, is copied in a lot of character action games. How every new enemy will get a unique intro for its codex entry, and it'll pop up and show you the little thing it's going on. And the way it did its universal currency, they're having split currencies. They've gone back to split currencies, by the way. There are now uh, the new monsters, the green ones, all drop little green juice that you can turn to Rodon, and you can buy regular items and the platinum ticket for the boss fight with him eventually, once I eventually get a million of them. And then there are red orbs that just look like they're ripped straight out of Devil May Cry that you use to upgrade Bayonetta and Viola and their demons and their weapons. And then there are the halos that you get and use for cosmetics. So we're back to split currencies again, even though we decided in Devil May Cry 4, back in 2009, that was a really, really, really dumb idea. We should not do that anymore. Because nobody liked the Proud Soul mechanic. So we're back to that again. Have fun. And then, yeah, it's just disappointing. I love these games. I love games that let you play the way you want to, have multiple viable pathways, getting to the end, and they all feel good and are fun to learn, and prevent you can present yourself with as interesting a challenge as you want. That's a big part of these games is player expression, which is hard to define and will definitely be misused by the gaming media if they ever get a hold of that term, and they probably have already. But when I say it, I mean literally how you play the game different from other people. I mean it exactly as it says on the tin. And Bayonetta 3 just doesn't permit that very much because of its demon summoning mechanic and because Viola is just garbage. And she only has one playstyle anyway, so everybody is resorting to the most efficient way because she's just too big of a pain in the butt to learn how to play right. Nobody wants to. So yeah, I if you are a fan of Bayonetta for its big flashy animations, its over the top characters, its wackadoodle story that doesn't make any sense until you go read the notes, well, you can make sense of Bayonetta too. But and all that stuff, yeah, sure, you're fine. You can go buy the game. If you're in this for the gameplay, give it some serious thought as to how much you're willing to put up with and how much you like this type of game before you go buy it. And that's about as damning as a criticism I can give for these type of games. So while it's still fresh in our brain, anything you wanted to know about Bayonetta 3?
Not really, although there is the other story related to it that we can segue into from here.
Right. So this goes straight into our news because Bayonetta is literally the only media I played this week. Didn't have time for anything else. Holy crap, this deer.
Do you have a healer?
I
A
gotcha.
heal?
I've been healing
Okay.
you.
Okay, I was like, why do I always have aggro? I thought blue mages were OP.
But yeah. So you will remember several weeks ago we reported that Bayonetta's original voice actress, whose name I forget, was making a big fit about how little she was offered to be paid. And this is weird because I assume Platinum would still pay standard industry rates. And
Well, more to the thing that makes it definitively weird is that when she turned it down and they hired a replacement, they hired a union voice actor, which means that they were still paying union rates.
yeah. So, and then later on, she would contradict her own story, or she would backpedal on some things she said, and it was just it stunk from the beginning, and it continued to stink even worse the more she opened her mouth. Well, I've actually played the video game now, and I can tell you exactly why she wasn't getting paid very much. It's because she had 6 lines in the game.
Yeah, the thing is that she must be really, really dumb, like really stupid, like absolutely mind-boggling levels of stupid. Because the only way her scam works is if the game never comes out, which wasn't going to happen. Like, because this seems clearly about her trying to spin a victim story so that she can get a bit of attention,
Yeah,
and that's it. But that only works. The only way in that which that pays off for her is if somehow nobody ever plays the game.
yep. Every single Bayonetta from an alternate universe is one of a handful of actresses they got, and they're either a handful of them doing different actresses or voices, or they all have a different voice. Their accents are so comically thick it's hard to tell. But this means, and it's very clearly set up this way, that when OG Beehive Bayonetta shows up in a super badass moment at the end of the game, that's supposed to be a big wham moment, and having her original voice for just that Bayonetta was supposed to be part of the big surprise that now isn't there because the original voice actress threw a hissy fit.
Yeah, this is one of those things I'm just going to put down to tantrums thrown by those artistic types.
Yeah. So that puts an end to that.
But why lie about it? Like it's I don't know. I don't know. Just it seems like the whole thing was just unbelievably stupid, and the main reason people fell for it is that they gave her credit for having more than a room temperature IQ.
Like I thought this might have been the case immediately because we're dealing with alternate universes and multiple Bayonettas were advertised in the marketing. I'm like,
I have to admit that my suspicions about it were mainly because I'm a misogynist. So like it was garden variety chauvinism. Oh, it's a woman complaining, so there's probably more to it than this. Is probably not entirely honest.
uh, sometimes a safe route, but in this case, there was also evidence piled up against her even before this. And while I am normally more forgiving to a lot of the performer types if they do performances I like, uh, this stunk from the beginning, and I didn't give the story much attention because I just didn't believe this bitch.
Like it's just these days, everybody like there are basically certain individuals have made women in the voice acting industry have a bad reputation by default. Like you now start from bad reputation.
Do they look like a villain in a Phoenix Wright game when they're being deposed?
They look like a beached whale usually.
Do they have orangutan arms?
Maybe.
Oh no, that one's Mars Girl. She's an influencer, not a voice actress.
Yeah, well, she obviously was bucking for a transfer to the upper classes, as it were.
Yeah.
But
But
Yeah, it's certain people have the made people suspicious. This is the same as the Me Too thing, right? Ultimately, where because there are so many fake Me Too reports, they've gotten back to the reverse position of where they thought they were trying to go, which is now people can't give any credibility to these reports initially without additional evidence because so many people have been falsifying them.
yeah, when liars
And this
lie,
is
we tend not to believe them anymore.
so now that actors have this reputation for being basically unpleasable and generally mendacious, now we're in a situation where they all get treated like that.
Hmm. And then
Like this is the rod that they have made for their own backs. It didn't need to be this way.
and because
Like there was a time where they were on track to become like other types of celebrities. But now that they've all demonstrated that they are unprofitable drama llamas, they're all going to get replaced by AI within the next 10 years.
and
Like
it's
it will be a case where people will be called in to do like voice library sampling and they'll be paid for that and that will be all the money they get from a project.
yeah, there will be if it doesn't go down that route, it will instead go down the route of, oh, they'll just hire exclusively from the unions even more because the union babies have to get together to cry about each other or to make a big stink first.
Yeah, I think we are going to see a significant deviation into terms of synthesized voice work. Like, I think that there will be people who will destroy the voice actor industry by selling libraries of voice samples from which dialogue will be engineered. Once the rough edges get filed off the technology, I think that that's the way it's going to end up going, and it will only be the really really big name actors who have impeccable records as far as marketing is concerned, who will continue to get work.
Yeah,
And if you manage to spoil your reputation with all the fans, you won't be one of those people.
yeah,
Like I'm sure Nolan North will continue being hired, but a lot of these no names, like I mean the thing with the Bayonetta voice actress is that she's a no name.
yeah.
Like what
She's
else has she
literally
done?
only known for Bayonetta. Like she
Yeah,
has
like
other minor roles, but none of them are as big or as impactful as Bayonetta. Not even close.
you simply can't risk your reputation like that. There's nothing in it for you. There's no potential upside. Very, very silly behavior on her part. Didn't need to be like this, but she did make it that way.
Through a temper tantrum, and it just I saw it coming. I'm like, I bet you in this final scene right here, is going to show up, and it's going to be supposed to be a big surprise. But in a way, because the voice actress threw a temper tantrum, that's a part of the reason you can see it from a mile away because you know the whole game it's coming.
Yeah, well, it's all very silly. It's water under the bridge now, and the reputation of voice actresses in that industry has now gone down another notch. They don't do themselves any favors.
We
I
are firmly in the
feel
negatives
kind
on
of
that notch wheel now.
I kind of feel bad for the ones that are actually doing their best and doing honest work for an honest day's pay, since there are all these other grifters in the mix. But I guess there's not much to be done about that now.
Yeah, but yeah, just a story about that. That's just the actual story of what happened. So she just didn't have any lines. That's the answer to the question.
Yeah, and the thing is that even if she only had a few lines, if she got involved in the project, they probably would have called on her to do bit work for other extras and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and she would have been
Because I mean,
called.
well, you're in the studio today, so we will have you record a few extra things while we're at it. Like,
Yeah, they'd call you up for probably future advertising that you've now completely thrown out the window. They would call you in for any kind of DLC or expansions or any kind of additional work. Like, I think she does the voice for Bayonetta in the anime.
I mean, the thing is that she's now not the voice of Bayonetta. She's that woman who caused a big drama because she was the voice of Bayonetta.
Yeah,
Like, I hope it was worth it for you.
like, yeah, you did a good job, honey, but you Blew it all away with a temper tantrum. You could have just held on to your good thing and taken what it could have continued to give you, but no, you imagine your character got a bit part in this one installment. So that's her. There's one more Bayonetta topic worth mentioning that has been in the periphery and not really noticeable unless you uh, are canny to the story already and know what happens with it. So this is moderate spoilers for Bayonetta 3 if people care about that kind of thing. Uh, a ship has been sunk, and the alphabet people are big mad.
Really?
Yeah. Turns out Bayonetta's totally straight and wants a boyfriend.
That seems more or less like what I expected.
Yeah, they had got it
Isn't
in
that
their
isn't that sort
heads.
of implied? Isn't that sort of implied by the backstory anyway?
Yeah, and they tease her with Luca nonstop in the first and second game.
I thought that was more about winding Luca up, though.
Yeah, it is, but you get to 2 games worth of that, and it becomes foreplay, or could easily be interpreted as such. And so yeah, she gets together with Luca at the end of this game, and the alphabet contingency is big mad because they had got it in their heads that her and Jean were secret lovers, and that they believed.
Based on what? You mean the mutually hostile attempts to kill each other constantly?
I mean, they are good friends, and she was brainwashed by Balder at the time, but they're just friends. That like the only thing we've seen them do that hasn't been in combat has been they went on a shopping trip at the start of Bayonetta 2. But this is apparently to say, okay, they're totally in lesbians, my guys. My canon is backed by facts and logic.
But neither of them wears flannel.
No, well, Bayonetta will wear pretty much anything. She literally rips a curtain off a cruise ship to and turns it into a dress on as she's walking on the deck to better fit in at this fancy party she snuck into at the start of the Bayonetta 3. So I'm sure she could pull flannel off somehow. Kind of her thing, pulling off weird fashion. But yeah, there was no indication that there was any type of in lesbians relationship for John and Bayonetta.
But something representation.
Yeah, but they had, and it's hilarious because of just how much they believed it. They genuinely thought this was canon. They had convinced.
This is like that guy in the dress and Danganronpa being trans, isn't it?
Yeah, like there's no reason for that. In fact, his whole story is he goes to the manliest man in the cast and says, "I'm tired of being weak and wimpy, and the only reason I dress like this is because I'm afraid of being picked on because I'm too weak and wimpy. How do I get strong like you, Mister Man, and become a real man?" But no, he's totally trans. That's what the wiki will tell you anyway. I actually don't know what the freaking wiki is up to. That edit war was particularly hilarious, even though it was toxic as all get out. I would poke my head back in and check the edit page occasionally just to see the screaming notes that people had left each other.
What? So there was actually a faction who wanted it to be canon.
It was yeah, there was a faction that wanted Chihiro being trans to be canon.
No, I mean, was there a faction that was actually supporting the actual canon?
Oh yeah, there was a not. It wasn't a small group either. I would say it was about. Unfortunately, they were still in the minority. I think it was about a 35-65 split, and it just turned into a frothing edit war that never ended. And the mods tried to lock it, but it only made things worse because whenever they locked it, whatever it was stuck on the roulette wheel at that time, they'd be seen as taking the side of, and they didn't want anything to do with that. And so they
Everybody involved was horribly toxic.
yeah, so they kept so they unlocked it and just let him have at it. Last I left it, I don't know if they've relocked it or if they found a solution or finally given up or come to an amicable consensus or what. That was a particularly funny one. But yeah, people just thought John and Bayonetta were together for some reason. There's no evidence to support this in any of the games. But sure, these people believed it with all their heart, and they're big mad that they're not. Like Luca's the only male character that has gotten any screen time, and he has always been hitting on Bayonetta since he first met her. Like,
This far.
yeah. Oh,
This
that's
guy definitely went to the Rubin School of combat demonstration.
yeah, he did. Well, he thrusts it with great force. So yeah, there are good things to like about Bayonetta 3, but you guys I think know where I stand with it right now. It's not a bad game, but it falls so short of the potential that it could be, and does not do its franchise. So maybe recommend from me, depending on what type of gamer you are and what you're
A
looking for.
hard maybe.
It's a hard maybe because it depends entirely on what you're looking for. So
Yeah,
that's
I don't think I'll invest myself, thanks. Like I kind of I liked the first one. I liked a lot of the things about the presentation. I liked honestly I liked the fact that it was mostly fairly simple and that the gimmicks in there weren't too intense and that I felt like it left me a lot of latitude to do stuff that I wanted to do even if it was stupid.
yeah, that's what these type of games are supposed to be like. At all levels of play, you're supposed to find the way you want to play it and just be able to do it. And unfortunately, Bayonetta 3 just takes a step back in every regard for that, with no way to ignore the mechanic. Unless you're okay with getting told you have a silver rating in time every single mission.
What else have we got to talk about?
Uh, killing demons. Cannot tab out. Ugh. Let's see. So, not a lot. I was stretching Bayonetta so long because there ain't much here. I threw together this at the last minute because we have no Fern, and there just wasn't a whole lot that went on that was in our wheelhouse that I saw. So first, I guess we can continue from with our coverage of the Twitter shenanigans. So Elon has taken over Twitter and has made one change that I was humming and hawing about at first until I finally got it and thought this may turn out okay. He decided to charge $8 for blue check marks.
Oh, I thought this was a brilliant idea. Like I remember having a rather lurid conversation about my reaction to it. If I can find it when I was with somebody else. Where did I talk about it? Because I thought it was really funny. Oh yeah, I was talking about it to a friend of mine, and I was like, I was talking about how they're definitely going to pay for it anyway.
Yeah,
And it says, I want them to remember that they abased themselves before a mortal enemy and groveled at his feet every time they see that check mark. The only reason they can piss and moan about it is because they paid him jizya for the privilege. He's supreme ruler there. There's no board to subvert, no web of yuppie pseudo-intellectuals to infiltrate. Like, it's just like, I want them to all have that check mark and know that they bent the knee for it.
yeah, that aspect is certainly there, and you know,
That's what I'm mainly interested in is that because they can't they live on Twitter. They can't go without it. They can't ever be without it.
yeah,
So they're all going to have to pay. I mean, it's true they were paying like $1,500 for it before. Some of them, like if they weren't important enough to get it by default, then they had to go in through one of the back channels and pay huge sums of money because the check marks were being sold under the
yeah.
table by
That
Twitter employees.
that
Fairly
finally got
well.
confirmed this week. It was a well-known rumor, but
Yeah, it's sort of an open secret that that's how you get a check mark.
but
But
Elon just straight confirmed it in a response to one of the Wall Street Bet guys today.
so it's like now not only is it for sale to everybody, but anybody can afford it more or less. Because he said he's planning to adjust the cost of it between countries in accordance with buying power and not in accordance with currency valuation, so that everybody will have roughly the same amount of financial difficulty procuring it.
Yeah,
And
it's gonna be pretty tough accounting for all the countries and their current buying power, especially in as unstable of a market as we're. It's a good
yeah,
dream.
well, Elon's autistic enough that he'll probably do it. Um, But it's for me, it's just like because they will all pay for it, and they will know exactly whose idea it was they had to pay $8. The reason why they are now paying $8, the person specifically into whose pocket it will go, and they will know that they had to bow before Elon and do what he wanted in order to get on there, and they will complain about him and whinge about him and moan about him, and he won't care because he's the God King there.
It gets even better with the way he's been responding to people like Stephen King. It's like Stephen King going on complaining about how the plebs can now have their check marks too, and then Elon's like, "Yeah, it's all great. I'm still going to need $8 from you."
Yeah, he said that to Occasional Cortex too.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, most of these people probably have Teslas because they're big green energy nuts.
Oh yeah, and a lot of them will admit it. Like I saw some people talking about, I don't know how to feel about getting into my Tesla anymore.
Yeah.
And there was somebody who tried to dunk on him by saying, Elon's at Twitter, but Tesla still seems to be operating fine. I guess
Oh
that
no, I
means
was
he's not
actually
actually
there most
needed
of
there.
Thursday doing engineering consulting or something. I saw that post.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, guys. Just because you don't like him doesn't mean he's dumb, and y- it's not an accident that he's the richest man in the world. Like he didn't just blunder into it. As much as they want to believe it's just an accident, he didn't just blunder into it. And you're not going to get the better of him in an online shitposting contest.
He's too autistic. You can't do it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was Sargon was actually talking about it. I don't know whether it was someone like that. They'd seen an interview. It was one of his people anyway. They'd seen an interview with one of Elon Musk's ex-wives and trying to ask about what Elon's motivations were for things, and she said, "No, no, no. I think he's just autistic. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get other people's reactions, so he'll just autistically keep doing whatever he wants."
I can believe it.
Because people just keep trying to ascribe strange motives to the things that he does and whatnot.
Like, no, he's
But
just an eccentric, and that
yeah,
means he's autistic.
he's one of those old school eccentric rich people.
Like,
No, nothing mysterious about that. It used to be that all rich people were like that.
you'd think the flamethrowers would have given it away.
Well, I mean, back in those days, they still considered him one of their people because he
I-
was for a while, much like Donald Trump. They believed him to be on their side for a while because he was famous.
yeah, the idea that anybody could have a more neutral or even right-leaning stance is just never crosses their mind.
Well, I don't think Elon's like right leaning at all.
I know
I
he's
don't.
not. Absolutely not. He didn't work with Trump because he didn't like Trump's approach to green energy, which in partially could be a business thing because he does own Tesla. But I think he's a true believer in that crap. Otherwise, you don't go start the electric car industry.
I don't know if that's true because I think that Elon is quite well aware that electric cars are not the future and that they are not going to have anything to do with any kind of green energy future. I
Well,
think that he knows that.
it could be a means to an end because his real passion is space and going to space.
Yeah,
It's
I
what he
think
said
that
in
that's
all his
why he did it.
interviews.
I think it's just that he saw that there was a demand for electric vehicles. People wanted it, and they needed a big player to create that market and make that a real thing. And this was the way for him to get the money for his passion project. I think that's much more likely the reason because I don't think he believes in electric cars. I think he may have even said as much at some point in the past. And it's
It's
reasonable not to believe in electric cars because the simple reality is there is not enough copper on the planet.
when it comes to
I
people
don't I
like
don't understand why nobody seems to want to appraise that. Like there's even if you put aside all of the deceptions and problems with electric cars, the reality is there isn't enough raw material to build electric cars. You can't make them. Simple as that. The renewable energy doesn't work. Like you're either going to burn coal for those cars or you're going to have to use nuclear power and nobody wants to use nuclear power. There is no wind turbines. That's not a future. It's not a real future.
Power consumption is only going up because we need
Yeah,
more and more electrical devices.
uh, like I keep saying, it's about raw materials, and like the most obvious of them is copper, in my opinion. Like it's very easy to talk about the rare earth metals, um, for electric cars because nobody knows how long that's going to last, and most of it's under China's control. So that's already a chancy thing. But the thing with copper is we've been mining copper forever. People have got a relatively good idea of how much copper can be brought onto the market at present. It takes like 4 tons of highest purity copper to make a single wind turbine. Like that's not going to that's not even going to pay for the amount of energy it took to haul 4 tons of pure high purity copper out of the ground, much less to refine it and then assemble the sodding thing. Like it's a ridiculous idea. The whole wind turbine thing is a ridiculous idea. But people are clinging to it along with all these other equally ridiculous ideas. Similar materials argument applies to solar power.
Yep, that's the one that drives me the most nuts because they're taking off over here. And I heard my dad talking about putting solar panels on the roof to supplement our power income. I'm like, Dad, if you do that, your next words better be the only reason I'm doing it is because there's a tax cut. Because that is a
Well, I mean,
colossal waste of time.
even if he does, what are the odds are that he's going to live long enough to see them pay for themselves?
Not very good.
Because it takes about 20 years to do that.
Yeah, because the only financial reason in the U.S. right now to put solar panels on your roof is the tax cut.
So it all seems very, very silly. I don't like. I could understand if you were doing very, very simple, cheap solar because you can do it cheaply, right? Like the cheap ways that you can do it is like preheating your hot water and that sort of thing by having it
Hmm.
go up on the roof, and that way you're sort of indirectly saving electricity, and the only thing you have to pay for is a heat exchanger. There's no solar panels per se, but like there's lots of different ways that you can sort of trim your energy budget a little bit, but ultimately they're not going to alter the amount of materials that need to be mined and coal that needs to be burned to fuel this grand green energy transition, which is going to have no impact since everybody knows that all the emissions are actually perpetrated by China and India, who have no interest in it.
Yeah. Reducing carbon emissions by 0.5%, even if all your projections are correct, isn't going to do anything. So you get China on board, nothing matters.
New Zealand is absolutely hysterical about it. Like you can't actually see our emissions on a graph. It's not possible. We are not merely not a big contributor. We are such a small contributor that it's very, very difficult to measure. But yeah, there's long been a sort of like the governments have been pushing this clean green New Zealand image for as long as I've been alive. Like, it's not a new thing by any stretch of the imagination. Um, so we are sort of all in on the whole green energy thing, no matter how ridiculous it is, despite the fact that we've got a ridiculous amount of hydro and geothermal power on our grid already. Like it's probably I think it's actually a majority of our power comes from renewable sources that is on the domestic grid. Of course, industries all burn fuel oil in their own boilers because that's how industry operates, and then they sell that excess power back onto the grid when they've got too much. So yeah, it's all the whole thing is sort of like a plan that has been devised by people who never ran the numbers because
Or,
that was not the point. The point was not to be successful.
or people that that didn't need the numbers is the impression I always get from it. Like you said, this has nothing to do with it being successful. It's all about being able to push control onto people.
Yeah, it's about controlling people and being able to harvest control out of the various state powers. Like that's what actually happens is that you generate additional authority within the sort of intelligentsia. The experts, man, got to follow the science.
Yeah, I will never listen to another quote unquote expert for as long as I live. If their credential is anonymous expert or they are quoted as the experts, whatever you're telling me is a lie.
What's next on the agenda?
Next up, uh, let's see here. We have Witch of the Holy Night's finally coming out. Little newslet, and it comes out in December, first week of December. I don't know if I'll play it right away, but I've been waiting for it for so long. I would feel kind of bad not playing it at all.
It sure has been a long time coming.
Yeah, finally here though. Finally get to see Toko be a villain. Oh, I didn't have very much time left. And then we have Yoshi P trolling people. So I put this one in here
He
because
wasn't trolling people though. He was just being reasonable. It's just that people tend to find reasonable people as being trolling them these days. It's same as how you nowadays it's the fashion to accuse anybody who tells you the truth of gaslighting.
yeah, it's well, that's kind of what I meant. The truth is trolling to these people. That's all you have to do to troll them is just tell them the truth.
So this is
So
a debacle that was created regarding an interview given by Yoshi P in his capacity as director of Final Fantasy 16. So basically, the gist is he was asked a question about whether we can expect to see diversity, and by which they mean black people, in the because that's the only type of diversity there is black people. Um, whether they will be able to see a bunch of black people running around in FF16, which at present there has not been any evidence of lots of black people running around in FF16. And Yoshi P's response was basically to talk about the setting and how well it's intrinsic to the setting is the fact that there is this epidemic that's raging, and they don't want it to be depicted as being a global epidemic or anything, a global plague. It's supposed to be a local problem that they have, and the land and on that landmass specifically, and the kingdom in which it takes place is one that is very deliberately styled off of medieval Europe. And so, in order to communicate that type of localism, he chose to have it be a very a very limited culture that is all like pretty much all ethnically European looking.
they all whiteys.
And it would have broken down the communication of the fact that it's a local problem if they had a very cosmopolitan cast. So that's a perfectly reasonable justification on story grounds. And well, realistically, in another era, the question wouldn't have been asked to begin with because it's a very silly question. But yeah, so he gave this answer, and of course, everybody in the commentary was absolutely thrilled because it gave them a reason to accuse him of dewacism. So yeah, now they all want to cancel Yoshi P because he's racist.
Yeah,
I don't think he cares though. I don't think he cares.
I
The
get.
problem is whether his bosses will decide that this is something that they want him to worry about. Thankfully, he's left this sort of thing so late in production that they can't go back and change it now. So yeah, I think he'll probably skate on it.
Yeah, I think he just doesn't say anything about it and it blows over. What does he care what the
Yeah,
Western media thinks anyway? It takes him a while to recognize the Western media most of the time anyway. If he recognizes
yeah.
it at all. Usually the JP team for Final Fantasy XIV doesn't respond to the Western stuff very much at all.
Oh, that's not really true. That's not really true. They do have people who monitor the Western temperature on things. It's just that there are some things that they can't really contextualize. Like, for instance, the latency issues. They just don't contextualize that because it's not something they understand. They've got no real experience with it. They have run simulations for latency, but that sort of thing is not really that helpful.
Here's these guys. But yeah, I don't think Yoshi will care. I don't think he should care. I think he'll get away with this just fine. All he has to do is just not say anything about it and just let it ride, and he'll win points with our crowd for doing it.
Yeah, yeah. I think the whole thing was all very silly, but I think that more and more normal people are going to start seeing this stuff as silly because they're just tired of hearing about it. It's going to be you could sort of infer it from Yoshi P's response when the topic was brought up. He was very clearly like internally groaning.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
the sort of response that he'd given.
Oh no, not this shit
Why,
again.
why do we have yaks?
They respawned on us.
Like, I think he referred to it as something like, "Oh yeah, this is a popular topic to talk about now, diversity." But yeah,
But
I think that the lifespan on this is pretty limited because people are really sick of hearing about it at this point. Even people who are totally disengaged from any sort of culture war have just they aren't interested in dealing with this crap. It's meaningless to them.
so so yeah, that was the only story I had that had any meat on it. Well, there's the next one, but I didn't. It came out pretty late in the week, and I didn't do enough reading on it. So I'm not sure I want to hit it because I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it. But AMD put out their new flagship GPUs, and they're half the
Right.
price.
So these are the first generation of the chiplet design that they're going to be using for the new generation. Now, as far as I know, most of the benchmarking work hasn't been done on it by the independents yet. Uh, but it doesn't really, at the price that it's going to retail at, it doesn't need to be all that brutal in order for it to seize a very well defined position in the market. Because frankly, it's just cheap enough compared to all of the offerings that Nvidia has managed to offer that it has a pre-prepared price class in the market to occupy because Nvidia basically left themselves wide open to it. Manufacturing a chiplet design is significantly cheaper because you don't need to have large flawless patches of silicon the way you do if you have a really large die, because you're using multiple smaller dies. So you don't need the highest grades of silicon to do it, meaning you can use cheaper silicon, meaning you've got lower fail rates in production, meaning you can bring the price down for the end user. These prices are still
Big.
very high because they've gotten used to charging a lot now, and it's going to be very hard to cool that market down if it in fact ever cools down. But it is still cheaper than what Nvidia is charging. Nvidia have basically managed to cultivate a reputation as the industry leader, which permits them to charge as much as they want in a certain sense. But everybody's going to be strapped for cash very shortly, so I don't think that that's going to last.
I think we're already seeing the strap for cash penny pension, and I think people that I know that would have maybe considered something in the $2,000 price range from Nvidia would now more strongly consider something from AMD just because they're having to pinch money to not lose money from their paycheck every month.
Yeah, well, the point is that both companies have now announced their flagships because the whatchamacallit, the 4090 and the 4080 have been announced, and the 7900 XT and 7900 XTX have been announced for Nvidia and AMD respectively, and the price classes are such that AMD's just in lower. Anybody who has been budget conscious is now going to be looking interestedly at how the actual specs come out in practice for AMD. AMD still has a lot to prove because nobody's really run with a chiplet design for this before, as far as I understand. So they still have to prove that it's actually a viable approach. But I would say that probably in terms of heat generation and in terms of power consumption, it's also going to be a better prospect than the 4090, just based on the style of the board. And they've added a few other little gimmicks to the reference card as well that seem useful, like this temperature measurement on the intakes as well, which is very unusual and can be useful to normal users who want to know what like the case temperature is for the air being brought into the graphics card cooler and that type of thing. But if we're lucky, the cooling simply won't be a big issue. And they'll be able to stick to probably like 2.3 slot if their chiplets run efficient enough, which will mean that a lot more people can fit them in their existing case, which is something that's not the case for the 4090 series. There are a lot of people who want to buy a flagship are going to have to build a whole new rig to accommodate it
Yeah,
as a result of that.
I know you got a 3070, right? I got a 3070 Ti.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
have the same card. Just I have the juice. But you remember how big that thing was? I it's
It's
the
freaking enormous. I actually had to look for one that would fit in my case because some of them were over 30. Because I had like 300 and something millimeters of space, and I had to look for one that was shorter than that.
yeah
And I also, but due to the various positioning of things in my case, I use a separate, um, relatively high end network card because I was having connection problems in one of my old flats, so I use a separate card for that. And so I needed to have access to slots, other slots than the
it
than
couldn't
just
cover
the
every single PCI Express slot you had.
yeah. I still needed a PCI Express slot, so I
I barely have access to one more. I've been debating putting a network card in there with Wi-Fi on it. See if that
yeah
goes
I
better than the wireless adapter that I've just been running through USB. You think I should do it?
um depends on the specs of your router. Like you should generally match it to your router. So if you've got a good enough router, then that will justify getting a nice card.
Yeah.
If you just bought the cheapest one when you replaced it, then
No, no,
there's
no.
not really any point.
I conned the parents into paying for it, so they
Well, then get a nice card and take advantage of it. You might as well.
yeah. So I was thinking because my what actually happens with my internet is when I'm downloading stuff, those little Wi-Fi adapters just can't handle the amount of juice I'm pushing through the tube. We got to kill one.
Uh, uh,
And they my computer will lag, but everyone else will be fine, and all my other devices will be fine. I'm bottlenecked by my Wi-Fi adapter, at least for downloads. Uploads are just crap in general. I don't think I'm hitting the limits there. That's just Georgia upload internet.
but
Oh,
yeah,
not
it's
doing that one.
there's a big issue with cooling and space that is brought in by the new 40 series because it's just such a chunky card. Because Nvidia have taken the approach of brute forcing more power. It's an approach that's going to hit the wall. There's a bit of headroom for GPUs yet, provided that they move to a chiplet approach because they've got the set of latitude to do that. CPUs are going to hit the wall pretty brutally though. Like the newest series of Intel CPUs is incredibly powerful, but you have to pay for it in power. Like if you were to use a flagship Intel CPU and a flagship Nvidia GPU, you would need like 1,000 watts of power just to run those two components. Just
Yeah.
those two.
Well,
Not taking into account the motherboard or anything else or any power losses or anything like that. This just like to make sure that you had enough headroom to not cause your computer to go into shutdown under load for just those two components.
and for all of our lives, the 1,000 watt power supply has been comically overkill. That
Yeah,
you would,
it's been sort of a meme, really.
I mean, I would get it because I've had so many power supply power issues in the past that I just gave up, and it wasn't that much more than the 800 watt anyway. Boy, am I glad I did.
Yeah, I have a 650 watt, which is sort of like enough and plenty of headroom for all of the components that I've got. But I couldn't reasonably put premium components in mine. Like because my CPU is relatively powerful, I would be pushing my luck to actually put a 3070 Ti in mine. That would be sort of at the ceiling. I would be touching the ceiling of what I can reasonably do with modern components then, because I do have a 12th generation CPU, which is a relatively efficient one, but still can be power hungry because it's 12th generation. My previous PC, on the other hand, despite the fact that it literally weighs twice as much as my new rig, and most of that weight was hard drives, mini hard drives that I had of the classical kind.
Yeah,
SATA drives.
the,
I never had any power issues despite only having a 650 watt in there, and it was loaded with components. This is over the past 4 years. That's just how much power demand has gone up.
and this we're
And
gonna.
there's a
I'm,
really rough ceiling for that because due to like the dynamics of where you put your heat generating components on a die, there's only so much room to dissipate that heat, and it's going to be a problem because we're stuck with this for the time being. PCs are stuck with this x86 architecture, which is just everything hardware wise in your x86 processor is compatible with everything back to very early PCs. And by very early, I mean like 8086. So you've got all of these instruction sets for that kind of thing that are totally redundant and unnecessary now. And all of that power is going to waste through like multiple levels of compatibility in order to keep operating things the old way using the x86 architecture. So we're going to end up seeing a big architecture shift. I'm not quite sure what the implications of that will be or how you even carry it out, because that's the equivalent of moving everybody over to Mac hardware in the span of a generation or something. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of these things are. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you convince that many people to switch over quickly enough.
Well,
But
because you're going to be at the power ceiling eventually. We've hit power ceilings before and managed to find workarounds, so maybe we'll find one more workaround. But there's sort of like a practical limit to how many times you can do that, especially because we're sort of at the cap of transistor miniaturization at the moment, because you can only make a transistor so small, right? Because atoms are only so small, and you can't miniaturize an atom. It's already pretty small. So we've got this sort of practical engineering issue of things being at maximum miniaturization already in certain cases that can be practically achieved as far as people know. And on top of that, we've got these energy problems, and we've got all this redundant architecture, and we've got this just the old way of doing things being perpetuated indefinitely into the future. I don't know if you remember way back when, but before the Core 2 Duo was just the Pentium 4, and the attitude at the time was that the Pentium 4 was just going to be continued indefinitely, and they would continue to ramp up the clock speed and just hope that there wasn't a cap to it, and eventually they hit the wall, and that's why they had to develop Core 2. And so now we're in this world where everything had multiple cores, and then eventually we had multiple different kinds of cores, and now we're at the problem where we're about to scrape up against the ceiling again because we're just putting more power in now. And that's not going to go on forever, I'm afraid. AMD's approach with the graphics card of just changing the design is a good start, and I think that will probably help. But it all remains to be seen how well it performs. I think that a lot of people will favor this because of the compatibility. It's sort of like the way that AMD dropped to the ball with CPUs this generation when they announced their 7000 series in to compete with Intel subsequently announced 13th gen. They dropped the ball because they required people to basically build a system around it. They couldn't just drop it into their existing system and go. The same thing applies to NVIDIA, because the amount of power demand, the amount of case real estate you use, while more people will be able to just drop it into their existing rig, it's still not practical for a lot of people because the power demands are so high. AMD hopefully won't have to deal with that issue. They did, however, do some scummy things when they were doing the announcement. And the one that this is sort of a PSA, I guess, that people have to keep an eye out for, is the buzzword of 8K gaming.
We're already pushing what the human eye can see at 1440p.
No. You're not listening. You need to listen to the follow up. Now, when people say 4K gaming, they're talking about a multiple, right? 8K gaming is not. 8K gaming is a marketing deception, because it's not 8K gaming. 8K gaming would imply that they were basically doing another step up on top of 4K. That's what it would normally mean, but they aren't. What they're doing is that they're doubling the real estate of 4K. So what you are doing is when you are marketing your card as 8K, is you're marketing a card that can render on a screen that has double one dimension. According to the previous nomenclature, 8K would mean that you were doubling both dimensions. So the number of pixels would double along both width and height. But the way AMD's actually using it in their marketing material is for extra wide, not for doubling both dimensions,
Oh, I
which
see.
makes it way, way more easier to hit the quote 8K unquote target.
Okay. So you just increase the width and not the height.
Yeah. So they are not being honest with you when they're marketing 8K. They're not being honest at all. And a lot of their other marketing guff is also dishonest because they're not necessarily rendering every frame and that sort of thing. Like, in order to pad their numbers for their initial launch presser, they did a lot of like classical shady graphics card marketing stuff. Like, they are not shooting straight at all. So they really need to come to the party on the things that they do well if they want this to not be an embarrassment in actual execution. Because the numbers were not impressive once you factor in their marketing tricks. There's a lot of room for them to still end up bringing up the rear this generation. The question is, can they get their other savings to pay off, that they'll be able to capitalize on their lower price point? Because even if they have a lower price point, if people feel that, oh, well, it's a lower price point, but I'm just getting something that's strictly inferior, then they won't really benefit from that lower price point as much as you might think. It's true that the power of the purse is being a very is going to be a decisive factor this generation. There's no way of avoiding it. Everybody's poor right now, but people still won't want to buy an inferior product, and if they end up looking like one, then they're not going to be able to sell even at their lower price point. People will be suspicious of it. So yeah, but how well this all plays out in practice, we still need to wait and see what the experts in the enthusiast sphere manage to come up with their equipment when they analyze the actual performance of these things in practice and analyze the actual thermals, and when the partner cards start to come out. Because as far as I'm aware, because AMD I don't think sells their own hardware for graphics cards. I'm not sure about that, but I think they don't.
I
Or at
don't know
least
off
if
the
they
top of my
do, it's
head.
got a really bad reputation, such that I haven't really heard about it. But the partner cards will usually make or break an AMD unit, because historically a lot of their reference cards have been very, very poor, and the reference cards comprise most of what is out there in the wild to be tested right now, and they don't really represent the market case. They do represent like the capacities of the hardware, but they don't represent the market case. Like, the one that had the strongest reputation for this historically was EVGA, who are now no longer a player. But EVGA were extremely good at squeezing power out of a card that people didn't know was there. They were just good at it. They were good at the engineering of those boards. There's not really anybody left who's quite that good. Sapphire have been good in the past, but they can be a bit spotty. But yeah, it remains to be seen what the partners will do with this stuff, because they're going to be operating on new ground as well, because they're going to have to be working with the chiplet design for the first time. So yeah, this could be an absolute winner for AMD this generation, but equally it could be a damp squib if they go through teething troubles with their new hardware. So yeah, we don't really know how it's going to play out. There's promise there, but in practice, I feel like Nvidia's offerings went better than people expected, because the previous generation, the 30 series, was basically, while it's well regarded by the end user, technologically it was basically stagnant. Like, they increased the price and you got exactly that many dollars extra performance. So it's sort of like you didn't really make any progress. The amount of power you got hadn't gotten any cheaper, which is what you're really looking for in hardware progress. And this time round, for their flagship, they got a huge amount of performance uplift compared to the amount of extra money they had to spend, even though the end user has to spend, even though the prices are so high, you're still getting a lot of bang for your buck, even if it's bonkers expensive.
Mm-hmm.
The issue, that was surprising to a lot of people, because most people expected it to be as stagnant as the previous generation, because they were just using the raw power approach. AMD is not using the raw power approach, so yeah, all remains to be seen. The game is not won by anybody yet.
All right. We are way over time.
Yep.
So, uh, that's the show this week. I'll give you an email topic of the week. Talk to us about Bayonetta if you know the series and have played it. Uh, it's one that I have seen go through a whole life cycle now. I am still processing how I feel about it. So, all right, closing comments, and I'll get us out of here.
You got me to 39 blues.
And go kill the boss fight on the way back. Kill the 2 robots. So,
But this is reds.
oh, we'll go punch something with tail feather. I'm just killing stuff.
I had the apparently I had an animal weapon one up as well, because I've got a bunch of earth crystals and water crystals and stuff.
Oh, you can go get the all the weapons and throw them on a retainer now. Probably gotten about 4 or 5 weapons worth of those crystals out here.
Nah, because you need
Oh,
six different crystals.
it's one from each zone. That's right. And we were
Yeah, so now I've got a huge surplus of some and none of the others.
you're missing like 2 zones and the Azaslaw ones because we've only been out here for a little bit. All right. Well, folks, it was an interesting show. We did better than we usually do for our 2-man show, I thought.
I would rather not say that, because then I'll suddenly remember something that I thought was awful.
I mean, we had Bayonetta as a whole topic that is all about legs, boobies, and butt on its marketing,
True.
and we
It's
didn't
true.
mention it once.
Although I have to say that I've never thought even once that Bayonetta was remotely attractive.
No, those are giraffe legs. Those are not people legs.
Like, there's something terribly unnatural about her.
Like that's what Baron Trump's daughter would look like.
I don't want to think about that. He's a monster.
He's just good. He's just good. I saw a picture of him that was like Baron Trump helping his dad out at rallies, and it's just a picture of him holding up the spotlight that they normally put like on the big giant stands way above the crowd.
The thing is that Donald Trump himself is really tall, but standing next to his son, he looks short.
Yeah, he looks like a midget compared to Baron Trump. Like Donald Trump's about my height, I think. And
Yeah, I know he's over 6 foot.
and but his kid is just the kid isn't human. I don't know what Trump fed him, but it worked.
It just keeps growing and growing.
Be able to have, we won't need rockets to go to the moon. Just have Baron reach out his bedside window. Right. Giant presidential children aside. We are working on an MPP episode. I don't know if we'll get it done and get it recorded this weekend. Our schedules are. I need to see if Vol's able to record. We have enough material. We could probably do a show with what we got. It needs some polishing. But
It will probably be a bit disorganized in some ways. We are likely to get sidetracked for an extended period, because
yeah.
that's how we do.
And
But
those
we're gonna try and crap something out anyway.
Yeah, so we'll see about recording it. Hopefully tomorrow before the midterms. If not, we'll do a post midterm show analysis for you.
I would like to get it done before midterms if possible, because most of it's going to be rendered redundant as soon as they happen if we're really unlucky.
I would have wasted many hours today typing up crap for the midterms if we don't get it done before midterms. So if you're going to be around tomorrow and you wanna crack it out, later in the evening I should be free for me.
Yeah, I intend to be around. The question is at what time and how long can I go before my stomach will get upset. I've not been feeling that well today, so
You must have caught it from Fern. Please don't give it to
yeah,
me.
it's internet disease.
Please don't give it to me. I got to make it through this week at work so I can confirm stuff is done with the CPA and I can finally get this off my brain.
Just get a laptop and do your taxes on the can. It'll be fine.
That's pinecone time.
You'll have a lot more can time if you get sick, believe me.
All right. I think we're done, folks. We'll see you next week. Sayonara. Bye bye.